Good evening, good afternoon, everybody. We'll start in a minute. I think we have everybody except for former council member Hadlock, I think, is missing. Well, I see Marcus has joined us, and I see Lisa has joined us. So we do have a quorum. So I guess we're going to go ahead and start as hopefully they will join us. Councilmember Councilmember Hopkins, and also committee member Hadlock hopefully will join us soon. But we're going to go ahead and start with the call. I call this meeting to order, and I will start with roll call with myself. I am co-chair Awet Eyasu, and I will go ahead and call out your names, and if you could say present and go ahead and introduce yourself. I will start with co-chair Mark Perkins.
I'm present.
Thank you. And committee member Lisa Williams.
Present.
And council member Laura Hopkins, is she in with us? I don't see her. And also committee member Warren Hadlock. I don't see him either. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start. We have quite a few agenda items, so we definitely going to have to start. And the first agenda item is we have a discussion updating our urban agriculture and microfarming ordinance. And I want to my co-chair Mark Perkins and also Lisa Williams to introduce this agenda to us. I want to recognize co-chair Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Eyasu. So I am really wanted to bring this just back before the committee. I understand actually I had conversations with a number of members of our community, of our city, that have put a tremendous amount of work to this. I found out that the history of this proposed ordinance goes back almost 8 years, actually, to 2013, when some of the initial questions were being asked, and has been through a number of iterations with input from organizations like Global Growers, members of our formal council, organizations like Roots Down, and various others that I'll probably miss more people if I don't recognize everyone. And so I want to acknowledge just the hard work that's already been put into this. The reason I wanted to bring it up is it's sort of been, I guess you could say, on ice for a year or so now. And it still has a significant amount of interest in the community in terms of people who are interested in seeing it passed. So I think the question before us and before the committee this evening is really, are we still in the same place that we were several years ago? Are there any questions? Do we feel like it's complete enough as is to go ahead and move forward to council? Do we need to revisit or tweak anything within the ordinance as it stands? And really anything else as you all as a committee have reviewed this and taken a look at it. I'm interested in just hearing where everyone is and kind of how we're feeling about it in terms of actually moving it forward through the legislative process. So I'll just open up the floor, to any questions, comments, other committee members at this time.
Committee member Lisa, you want to add anything before we start the questioning?
I can't say I'm well versed in the ordinance. I definitely participated in the community meeting, and it was exciting and something I would like to see happen. But I'm not qualified to vet the ordinance. So I would recommend and I'm sure there are people here that are and know a lot more about it than I do. I just don't know what the community's understanding of the ordinance is. There was certainly some interest. I just don't know what I would say if we could quantify, the need that it fills, and put it in simple terms, that would be great. But I don't know the viability of it. I don't know how it's been done in other cities and how successful it has been. But I definitely have an interest in seeing it move forward in some way.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Williams. And I just want to really appreciate your help and also Mark's help on this. And I've gone through the draft and it looks great. I definitely have quite a few questions, but I will wait on for a minute. Before I is there any speaker on this that you have, Councilmember Perkins?
Let's see, I'm looking at our guest list. We had a few people that were interested. A number of folks had some scheduling conflicts as well. But I don't see anyone right now that expressed interest in speaking. So, okay, actually, Mr. Rosenthal is here from Roots Down. So about that, Jamie. So, Jamie, if you want, we can give you 3 minutes to just sort of share your thoughts on this, just from your perspective. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah, a lot of resources and time was put into creating this ordinance, and we are certainly working with Commissioner Ted Terry in District 6 to actually do a similar type of ordinance for DeKalb County as a whole. So it'd be really nice to have this ordinance, get signed off and be put into play. Where we left off, former council member Andrea Cervone and I left off was engaging the community around the ordinance. An ordinance is just an ordinance that typically cannot really work unless it's actually activated and it's talked to the community about, just the basically demystifying the processes and understanding the ordinance and how to use it. So I'm really excited that you guys are, this is back on the agenda item and that this is going to be looked at. I think it's really super important and would love to help in any way, shape, and form in educating the community on how to use this ordinance to the best way possible. There's a lot of standards out there for, creating really beautiful gardens. I believe that they could be productive spaces that boost the economy of the city, and also could be a really great learning opportunity for youth. So I think it's a really great thing that we could do in the city of Clarkston, and I would love to help with facilitating the community aspects of it. But that's kind of where I have to talk about it. I was really excited about getting this drafted, and really excited that you guys are bringing this back on the table. So thank you so much for the time, and good seeing some faces here that I've missed for over a year and a half. So good seeing you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. And I just want to give a little quick summary of this this ordinance in front of us, and then we'll open it for discussion from the community. Overall, this ordinance deals with primarily two things, but with raising of farming of fruits and vegetables, or overall gardening in general. And the second aspect of it is raising of animals. And both of them also have subsections. The growing of fruits and vegetables, or gardening in general, deals with for small version of it, which is basically done primarily for home personal consumption. And there's another version that is that would allow limited farming for market growing, and it also deals with beekeeping and also composting. So it has a lot of things, and there is a lot of restrictions, obviously meant to make sure that this is done without disturbing the peace of the community. And there are quite a few things that are still prohibited. I remember roosters are still prohibited, and also selling of meat and milk byproducts are still prohibited. And I will start with just one of them. I'm not sure, honestly, why somebody cannot sell a limited amount of goat milk. Maybe I'm not sure if we can tweak that. But this is pretty much what the overall parameter of this ordinance is. And if necessary, we can definitely bring it back again. And if needed more discussion, this is a big subject, and we want to make sure we actually listen to the concerns of the community. And is there anybody who would like to speak on this from the community? Please raise your hands, or just let me try to see the full camera. All right, Mr. Hadlock, I see you, but you are in with a different name. Okay. Is there anybody who wants to speak on this?
I have some questions.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Hadlock first, and then is that Lisa?
It was Lisa.
Yeah, I can go after Mr. Hadlock.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to, I did have some questions, and I'm not sure who to answer this over the slaughtering provisions. Obviously that makes everybody go eek, but I do understand there could be a need for it in certain situations. So is DeKalb County allowing the slaughtering? Where are the workshops going to be, and how are we enforcing those humane killing workshops and things like that? Like how do we go about that? Obviously there's an education piece, but I don't know. I just don't, this is where we're going to get hung up, I think, and people are going to want more information. Does anybody know how that's been handled in other successful ordinances?
I do.
Mr. Rosenthal can help us on this.
Yeah, I have a few comments there. you know, Ms. Williams, I think that that's really one of the biggest, largest elephants for this ordinance. It really is. There are certainly ways to do this. I think education, let's just say basically the obvious. Slaughter in Clarkston is happening, right? It's happening anyway, right? We do know that for a fact, and it is happening, right? So the idea is to offer free resources and education to make it more humane and to make it easier, for people to be able to do it. Teaching workshops and courses. We could also partner with local like Spotted Trotter and people that offer these really great butchery classes, and they actually partner with other farms like Riverview Farms, and we were partnered with them as when I was a farmer who taught slaughter for small animals, for backyard animals. So we could certainly partner with organizations and other farms that do this really well, which is what I think we should do, and open up those free workshops and courses to the community to be able to take them. Yeah, I think it's one of those things that just happens in a community that people don't really ask for permission for. It's easier for people to just say, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to do that, rather than going through and asking permission. So I think education is everything.
Is slaughtering currently prohibited in our ordinance, or
Yes.
is it just silent?
Yes.
It's prohibited.
It's prohibited. So yeah, I think to move this forward, we definitely have to have our ducks in a row from the education perspective and from the, where the prerequisites are concerned, the code enforcement and all those things, which is a little bit beyond my knowledge, but it sounds like, Jamie, that's really good input on how to move it forward. I think we're gonna have to be very clear on that to get this through.
Yeah.
I think from what I read on the draft does allow limited for home consumption use only, and it does allow slaughter in a limited amount, and it says it has to be with a permit acquired from the city manager, and also that the person who's doing it is required to actually take a class of some sort, I think from the draft so far. So it does allow it, but it doesn't allow it for sale. So I'm just saying about the draft. I'm not talking about our ordinance right now, current ordinance right now. So in a way, it does allow it partially, and I think we definitely could make it clearer. I really would not want to be done in an open space where people could see you from the street. I really don't recommend even doing that for public consumption. Where I grew up, this is done right in the open view, and everybody does it in their homes, but I really wouldn't want my children to witness something like that. And I really hope that we could, even for personal consumption, it should be done in a probably closed space and where people cannot see you from the street or some, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it would be nice if there was some enclosures and things. I mean, I think it does happen in Clarkston. We've heard it, and it's a little unnerving when you hear that. But I understand that it can be done in the right way.
Any other comments from the committee?
Yeah, I had a couple of comments. Can you hear me?
Yes, right. Yeah.
Okay. I used to, my brother and I used to have to kill a chicken for dinner when we were kids from time to time, and we had almost 2 acres of land and a chicken coop. I think we're stepping into a big gut pile if you start getting into talking about. This is this is really a rather tedious kind of involved affair here that you're talking about. And having variances that could be granted, exceptions by the city manager or whatever. I just think this is not a safe thing to be done outside of if you want to kill a chicken for dinner. Maybe if you got enough of a yard to legally have chickens in Clarkston, when quits laying eggs, you put it on the dinner table. But I would think that if we have slaughtering of animals, goats or sheep or whatever, I don't know. The only animals I could think of that people are slaughtering would be chickens, although I have heard that some refugees have slaughtered goats in their bathtub. I don't know. Those may just be urban, whatever, maybe tall tales. But I don't think that we have we don't want to have people be putting the offal from the animals into the garbage and all. That's just, I just don't think that's a clean thing. Now, I haven't had a chance to look at this entire ordinance because it's very lengthy. I started reading it earlier today, and couldn't get through it all. But and so I'm not really ready to vote to recommend anything to council for me personally. But it just does look like there may be a lot more complicated than what we need as the city of Clarkston.
What's the likelihood of us waiting or working with DeKalb County, adopting their ordinance when they get it through? I mean, how does everyone feel about that, having more eyes and broader community input on it? Or do we feel like this is a Clarkston ordinance and we're not going to wait for DeKalb County?
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, Councilman Perkins here. No, I think that's a great question. And again, it's sort of the hope I had for bringing this, to the table is, again, like I said, we've had a lot of work go into this. I think it can make a lot of sense to just align with the broader county ordinance, depending on where that goes. And if, our community, we tend to be fairly opinionated about what goes on here, and so if I think there's community alignment with what is happening in the broader county, it can create some clarity there. We're not having to, figure out a different rule book depending on, what side of a, property line or of a boundary, city boundary you're on. One question I do have with this as well, we could, have another discussion and invite some county representatives and as well to speak in detail on what's happening at that level. If the, committee thinks that's a good direction to head in. One thing we could also, consider as well, because this is broken down into sections and articles, it sounds like more of the controversial pieces of this have to do with livestock and poultry. And so one thing we could do is consider sort of adopting the, maybe the beekeeping portions of it, adopting the, the stuff relating to agriculture specifically, instead of livestock, and then sort of having these other articles in the background, to be determined at a later date. One question I do have for everyone on the committee, because again, really our question is, do we want to regulate in some form or fashion something that's already happening? Do we want to kind of create a legal framework for something that is already kind of happening behind closed doors, or not so closed doors? And I'm hearing sort of some different things, concerns. One, just sort of with the practice in general. And then another angle might be, do we have the sort of the capacity as a city to handle the education component of this, to handle the licensing component of this? So I'm interested to hear just a few more perspectives on that, if anyone wants to clarify or discuss that further.
Thank you, Mark. And I actually was also gonna pivot on the same kind of thought, which is almost all of this requires some kind of license. It's even for eggs, they need, that's a new word I learned, the egg candling license or something, which is basically home occupational license. I'm not sure if that's specific for eggs only. Or while all the rest all requires, if somebody wants to sell it at the site, he must have on his residence, he must have a home occupation license. For the other ones, they also need to be licensed to sell, whether it is by their next to their farm with their farm stand, or if they're going to sell at the farmers market, they don't require a license, but the farmers market is required. So I think the licensing seems to be pretty easy and clear to me from reading the text. Everything requires some kind of license when you start selling, and you cannot sell on site if you are growing something for personal consumption, unless you have a home occupational license. And the only difference is for the eggs, you need to have that. I'm not sure what is the process or how difficult it is if somebody just have a couple of chickens or 3 or 4 chickens, and if I don't know if that process is, how difficult is the process? I'm not sure on how people get licensed for this or whether we even have it. And I'm not sure who else is in the meeting. Mr. Gomez, are you in the line?
You were asking what would be the process? We would have to define what the process would be to obtain a license to sell eggs. We currently don't have one, so we would create one. That's what this ordinance is proposing.
Okay, so right now we don't have any kind of licensing process.
To sell eggs specifically, no. But if you are selling anything out of your house, out of your residence, you do need a home occupation, but you cannot have anybody go to your house to buy anything. So that's for anything in general. But this ordinance is specific to microfarming, specific to the selling of eggs.
All right, thank you. So does that clarify, Mr. Perkins?
Yeah, I think to that agree, and I'm more trying to get. I think where I'm hoping we come to is sort of what are our next steps, right? So we've got some sort of, it sounds like, general uncertainty on terms of whether or not this is ready to go back to council. And so the question I think before the committee is, all right, can we narrow that down to, what are the 3 or 4 questions or 10 or 20 questions that we would like to have answered? What are the steps we would like to take, to move this forward? Do we want to just wait and see what the county does? I think that's one of the options we have on the table. Or do we want to kind of engage in some more community dialogue, or another round of community dialogue, and see if we can't get some of these things answered. To the candling license, I think one option we do have, I have to go back and just double check. So I was looking at this earlier, and but there is I believe a state level candling license that you can get. And so I think one question, we could ask is, I think doing a little more digging in towards of each of these sort of categories, in terms of, raising livestock, goats, et cetera, and just saying, hey, if there's a state level licensing process for that, which I imagine there is, could we, instead of creating an additional administrative burden on our staff or creating our own, application process, just adopt or accept a state or county level license for that, which could be something we could look at. Again, going back to the, maybe some of the more controversial elements of this in terms of allowing slaughter or anything else, we could say, we'll allow this, pending the DeKalb County, licensing process. If you have a DeKalb County license, you just turn that into our city staff, and we'll approve it that way. So I think there's a number of different directions we could go with this. I think the question is what is, what do we feel is sort of the best next step?
DeKalb County, of course, Clarkston is probably the most densely populated part of DeKalb County. And DeKalb County is pretty densely populated, but it still has some rural spaces. It has places where you can raise livestock. And, farmland. The city of Clarkston has 2 or 3 lots where you could legitimately consider allowing people to have something like goats or sheep or I don't know what else, pigs. And that's kind of stretching it to the limits. I would like for us to, I think it'd be best for us to wait on this. I don't know if DeKalb County can really be the best guide because of the fact that it's so much larger than Clarkston, and there are still some pretty rural areas in DeKalb County, South DeKalb County especially.
Thank you, Mr. Hadlar. So I see there is some feeling from the committee members that we want to either wait, and I hear that Mark want to narrow it down and let's deal with the the easy hanging fruits right now and just deal with them or not. But I definitely agree that we definitely are not gonna finish discussing on this subject just with one meeting. So probably it definitely deserves another meeting and another conversation, especially the aspects of slaughter or the licensing process. It might need more. We need to dig for unexpected things. So be conscientious of all of that, because if we just pass all of this, we're gonna have people who will not understand it easily. So it will be a lot easier and better to kind of narrow it down, make it clearer, and educate our residents before we actually, because there is going to be consequences. There is going to be some people who might grow some fruit and they say, "Oh, I didn't know I cannot sell it." So we don't want to be in that kind of situation. Is there any other committee member who want to speak on this? And then I'll allow Councilmember Carroll. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm
happy.
Glad to see this come back. This is one of those things that sort of like died in committee before, and I was interested in looking at it again and reviewing it. I'm a little disturbed in that it's, we're the Environment Committee, and this is like urban farming, but it seems like the biggest part of it is related to animal husbandry and livestock. And if you care about global warming, like the number one thing you can do to stop global warming is stop eating meat. So animal husbandry is a huge contributor to climate change. So that's kind of concerning. And then also sort of crossing lines here with the Equity and Inclusion Committee, we have to keep in mind that some cultures, it says a livestock animal is anything kept for meat or wool or that. In a lot of households, dog might be perfectly acceptable for that. So if we are going to allow slaughter at home, will it include that, and should it? Or are we just going to only allow slaughter of animals that native-born Americans would have for dinner and not people from some other places where that might be a common dinner? So I would like to look at it a lot more closely, definitely, but I definitely want to focus more on the plant aspect of it than the animal aspect of it. I don't see any good, even if you say you can raise eggs but not have roosters. Well, by doing that, chickens are a lot like most animals, when they have offspring, they're usually half male and half female. But if you want to get some laying hens, chances are you only want females. So the male chicks are slaughtered shortly after hatching. So don't think that if you're raising eggs, it doesn't involve slaughter. It's just you're not doing it, but you're still contributing to the marketplace for it. So just be aware of that. I'm not judging anybody for that. I'm just saying it's not completely, your hands aren't completely clean with that as well. But yeah, I would like to see a lot more talk about actual farming of plants. That's just my thought right there. I do think we need to bring it back and look at it a lot more closely. I would hate to think someone had an article and it was decades old, but somebody in Clarkston was actually arrested for raising too many vegetables and giving them away. Was a violation of city code. I think it was back in the 70s or 80s, but it was insane. He liked to farm, he liked to garden, he raised a lot of vegetables, he gave them to homeless shelters. He got arrested for violation of city ordinance. So we don't want to be that city either that arrests people for giving away free food to the homeless. But yeah, I think the animal aspect of it, and Jamie, I know we had this conversation before about the importance of animal husbandry in compost. And I did talk to the guys who own Compost Now was Compost Wheels, and they're like, you can absolutely have perfectly healthy compost without animal waste in it. Animals happen. They're called microbes, and that's where most of your nutrients come from. So animal feces is not required in compost to have very healthy plants. So that's just my thoughts. But I think
Thank you, Councilmember.
Bring it back and look at it further.
And by the way, composting is also included in this ordinance.
Right, I saw that.
But it actually requires for animal feces to be treated only. If it's not treated, it's not allowed to be on the compost.
Mm-hmm.
But that is also included in this
right
ordinance, and it will be allowed, but only and if they're going to sell, they have the same requirements that they need to have a license. And there is requirements in terms of land. I mean, this includes a lot of things. And some of the concerns are actually not really a concern, because we're not going to have somebody raising a lot of cows, because it actually requires more than 3 acres. You got to have 3 acres to have for that purpose. So I don't think we're going to face that kind of situation. So there is a lot of requirements that would limit it. So I also agree that we can separate it, and we can make it only for urban produce. I don't know, ordinance, and we can separate it with the other. Instead of, we can remove all the things that deal with animals and handle it separately as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now I will recognize Councilmember Carroll. Go ahead, sir.
I was just going to speak to kind of agree with what Vice Mayor Eyasu and Councilwoman Hopkins and Councilman Perkins said, that I think it sounds like there's not really any controversy over the agricultural part of this. And it may be that, allowing farm stands, allowing the sale of produce and that type of thing can go forward, and that we may want to, do some more study, wait for DeKalb County / to get a closer look at the livestock portion. So it may be that bifurcating it makes more sense rather than holding up the relatively non-controversial farming part of it in order to deal with the livestock part.
Thank you, Councilmember Carroll. Okay, I will go ahead, Ms. Williams, go ahead. Lisa?
Sorry, user error. That all sounds reasonable, what Councilmember Carroll just said. I would just like to note that whatever is presented to the council when we get to that point, that any requirements for license and education and enforcement, all those types of things, that they should be fleshed out and planned out, and how we're obtaining those licenses, what type of education we're providing, and what the budget would be needed for those items. But as stated, maybe we break off the controversial items.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, I wanna listen from all other community members who wanna speak on this agenda item. Please raise your hand, or you just go ahead and introduce yourself first, and before we go on more, I think from. All right, go ahead, Amy.
Hello. I'm really excited to get a small farming ordinance in Clarkston. I would say I get splitting it up, but you guys need to know that all of this is happening right now in the city. There are people having animals and slaughtering them, and there are people growing things, and there are people selling meat and eggs and dairy, and all of this is going on. So to wait doesn't mean it's not happening and doesn't mean it's going to go away. Waiting is just allowing things to continue as is in not such a great way. If you guys, the council can go on ahead and pass something, at least it begins to bring order and structure and a process. It begins to bring safety and security for those doing it, those purchasing it, those practicing in it. So please don't hesitate for too long. This isn't not happening. You're not going to have people not raise and slaughter animals because you're only processing or only passing the agricultural plant growing part. They're still doing it. So please don't wait too long, because all of this is going on. We need these ordinances to get this in line, to get this structured, and to get this done in a safe way, not just for the people doing it, but the people that are participating in purchasing. It also could lead to a pretty cool downtown to tie in some economic growth and development, to have a local farmers market in one of those abandoned building spaces downtown that our local farmers can go and that the people from the community can buy from. The Tucker's Farmers Market is huge. We could do something like that, not overnight, but we could get there if we had something like this in place.
Thank you, Ms. Medford. And I just wanna just say that also this ordinance also does address the need for a farmers market, and the only thing is it requires somebody to be a manager, and he needs to have an occupational license. He needs to have occupational license from the city manager, and they can sell in that farmers market from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. This is just the draft, so it definitely it's included in the ordinance. So we could definitely leave the that part if there is a consensus, and also pass that as well. So that would solve one of the concerns that Ms. Medford brought. Any other comments from the community, from the city residents? All right. Since I don't see none, I will ask if there is any last comments from the committee members.
Yeah, well, Jamie was first here.
Sorry, my hand was raised before. I already said what I want to say. I'll unraise it.
Okay, well,
thank you.
So I was just wondering, is the Tucker Farmers Market, do they allow sale of pig meat and other animal parts and eggs and all of that? Or is it, I heard Amy Medford say that was a good example, but I'd be kind of, does anybody know whether they allow that in Tucker? That'd be a good place to get some ideas from them, but I don't, I kind of find it hard to believe they sell, you know, that they have a wet market in Tucker, so to speak, a Wuhan type thing. That's what I'm really afraid of here too, is we're going to get into we start selling butchered meat and butchering meat on your property and disposing of offal inappropriately and things like that. We're going to get into some health. We're going to get into some hazardous situations and maybe liability. So and that includes eggs, even eggs, unfortunately. Although I think, if I were raising chickens and I had a bunch of eggs, I might sell them to my neighbors on the side just to have enough money to pay for the feed. But anyhow, I just think we need to be really careful with that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I want to go ahead and ask the committee members and the co-chair, what would you like to go ahead? I see that there is a feeling to only pass, recommend the city council do something at this point, dealing only with produce agriculture, or we could also bring it up again for another meeting. We could definitely hold another meeting if necessary within the next 2-3 weeks, and we could discuss it again. Mr. Perkins, what do you recommend?
Actually, if I could real quick, just make sure, do we have anyone on the call that is representing Global Growers or Fresh Harvest? Just a couple names I don't recognize. And if you are representing of this and want to speak, you're more than welcome to raise your hand. If not, feel free to. I'll give a couple moments here. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay, I see in the chat, Elizabeth. Yeah, I was just more wanting to know. I know that both of those organizations have had some interest in this, and I know Global Growers in particular has also put a considerable amount of work into sort of this idea. So, thanks, Elizabeth. So, yeah, Councilman Eyasu, I think. So my thinking again is just making sure we have sort of clear next steps, right? I think, when we have concerns, I think it's reasonable to have concerns about things, getting out of control or becoming something that the community might not want, or, the whole of our community might not want. But that's why we craft good legislation, right? Is there's ways that we can, put some boundaries in place to, to kind of mitigate, the 2 or 3 ways something might go wrong, but allow for the, 100 ways that things could go right, and it could be a really good thing for the community. And so I get the same sense that, there's a little more reticence on the part of the committee to open things up in terms of the, animal, husbandry or, slaughtering or, that side of things, and maybe sort of a middle ground in terms of what we do around poultry. I agree that other members have stated this is, and members from our community have also stated this is already going on. And so again, I want to make sure that we come back to, we're not opening the door to something that isn't happening. We're creating a legal framework for something that's already going on. And so we're kind of opening the door for people to, to kind of, come into the light and to actually create some education around practices that are already happening. We aren't, going door to door and, checking for animal parts to see if someone was, killed a goat for a feast or something like that in the middle of the night. But this would sort of open the door to actually be able to have that conversation and provide resources to it. So I think what I would recommend is that we kind of come away with just some really clear next steps. I'm open, if we want to say we want to kick the agricultural part of this and recommend it to council, we could do that. If we want to schedule another meeting in between now and then, actually break the ordinance apart and just create sort of a livestock, urban livestock or ordinance, and then an urban agriculture ordinance. I think that could make a lot of sense as well, and give us some more opportunity to do a little more community engagement, but with a clear understanding of what we're trying to accomplish and the questions we're asking. So I'm sort of summarizing, but go ahead, Councilman.
I totally agree. Since in light of saving some time, I think I agree. So we're going to go ahead and we will we'll make sure we bring this back again, and we'll talk about the dates, and we will definitely what we'll do is the next time we meet, we're going to make sure it's broken down into 2 parts, and we will still continue the conversation on both parts but then at that time we might have a clear understanding that it's ready to send it to the council. So I think if there's anybody else who doesn't want to say anything different, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next agenda item.
Can I add one more thing? I'm sorry, Mark,
Please.
to make your life even more complicated because I know you have so much spare time. But I would actually suggest breaking it into 3 parts because you have the animal husbandry, you have the plant side of it, and just to be clear, agriculture does include animals. But there's also the micro animals. And I think if people wanted to raise mealworms and make pet foods or bees, that kind of thing, that is not necessarily the same thing as should we allow slaughter in the side yard. So I think that might be addressed differently as well for people dealing with the insect world or worms or things like that.
And so just to clarify,
Thank you.
Councilwoman, you're suggesting breaking it into growing plants, raising animals, slaughtering animals is sort of the 3 pieces.
Oh, no, the
No,
third
from what
piece would be micro animals. Mealworms.
Yeah,
Um,
just merge the
kind of whether any
and
kind of
medium-
animal.
I got you. All right. We're going to go ahead to the second agenda item, which is transportation walkability study, and recognize co-chair Perkins to present this.
Thanks again, Councilman Eyasu. So yeah, so this is more of a FYI. We want to give the opportunity to the committee if you guys have any questions. So I'm going to just briefly introduce it, and then I'm actually going to recognize Dr. Alan Hyde with Georgia Tech. So Dr. Hyde has long invested in our community, coaches a local soccer team with a program called Upper 90, and also is a professor at Georgia Tech, and I'll let him give a more thorough introduction. And so he is looking at doing a transportation walkability study in terms of access to employment, using youth as sort of the primary researchers in this study, and allowing them to develop their own perspective and recommendations. And so really the question for us really before the committee is, if we have any input or anything that, any questions you're interested in, I'll let Dr. Hyde go into more detail on that. And then also if we would be willing to receive a report of the findings of this and consider it recommendations. So Dr. Hyde, I'll go ahead and recognize you and give you 3 minutes to share a little bit more and entertain questions.
Sure, and thank you everybody for giving me a chance to talk to y'all today and give you some information about this. So again, my name is Alan Hyde. I'm an assistant professor in the School of History and Sociology at Georgia Tech, and I've been volunteering as a soccer coach in Clarkston for about 4 years, over 4 years now. And so this summer, actually this month, we started something we're calling the Summer Wipar Institute at Georgia Tech. It is partnering with Georgia Tech's organization called Serve, Learn, Sustain. This is a directive on campus to have more community engagement around Georgia Tech, not only in Atlanta, but throughout the greater Atlanta area. And we're partnering with Upper 90 to pilot a 2021 Summer Youth Participatory Action Research Institute, or Wipar Institute. The goal of this project is to train 6 youth from Clarkston to be researchers and to make their communities a place where it is easier for youth and all residents to move through their communities more effectively by foot, bicycle, bus, or other methods of transportation. They're going to present their findings and recommendations to a group of local leaders in the community, thus developing public speaking skills. They will also learn about the college application process, career paths that do not include college, and other life skills, as well as explore campus at Georgia Tech and the city of Atlanta. So they're going to be where the idea is that they develop their own, there's a topic of mobility, but they can develop their own specific questions. I think one of the big ones that we're leaning towards is, access to jobs. So a lot of the youth on the team, their families would like them to, once they turn 16, get employment. But a lot of the challenges are two things. One, they apply and they don't get the jobs. But the second is getting to those jobs. Many of them may be like on Memorial Drive or other places that are not easy to access by foot or by bicycle or even bus in some cases, right? And so we're going to be training them to do a variety of different methods of research. We started off participant observation. They're also going to learn something called photo voice, where they take pictures and of the community, and then they describe what that picture represents. They're also going to learn how to do interviews and then some mapping of quantitative data. And yeah, I think, we will be looking to present to local leaders of the community. And who knows what the recommendations will be or ultimately what they will decide to do, but mainly it's trying to get youth engaged in their community, and also hopefully get engaged with school next year when it starts back, because it was a rough year for them. So that's a really quick summary, and I don't know if y'all have any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Hyde. Is there any question or comments from the committee members? And I just want to quickly ask you, Dr. Hyde, that I think Clarkston is fairly walkable, and in terms of MARTA coverage, we do have, we probably one of the few cities that have 2 lines that pass through the city. Mm-hmm. Did you observe any good aspects so far? I know you are still doing the study, or you will do it in the future, but what's your observation so far?
Yeah, so we're taking the asset-based community development approach. So, Clarkston is great when it comes to walkability within the city. It's, the challenge is, especially when we think about jobs, they tend to be like 2 miles away from the city center. And so like linking that great walkability within the city to maybe those places where there may be people want to go there, but it can be difficult to get there. That's might be where we go. But I absolutely agree that, Clarkston is excellent when it comes to walkability, especially, thinking about Georgia and the suburbs of Georgia, like in Atlanta. So, we're taking an asset-based approach, and we really focused a lot today on, what are some of the benefits. So we did our first little activity today, despite the storm that rolled through.
Thank you, Doc. Any other comments or questions? All right. If there is none from the committee, anybody from residents who want to speak on this? I see that Councilmember Carroll have his hands up. I'm not sure if it's from the last slide.
No, it's for this one. Dr. Hyde, thanks for coming to present. One thing I noticed, it seems like you're mostly interested in helping them have access to walkability and jobs. That Clarkston's walkable. It seems like a lot of their jobs maybe just outside the city. Do you think it would be helpful if there were more job opportunities in the city center? There are more businesses in the city center that way they could just walk to them without having to, look at as many options to get outside of the 2 mile radius.
Absolutely. I mean, so, they often apply to jobs within the city, but those are in high demand, especially when we think about entry-level jobs for, 16 to 19-year-olds. But yeah, if there's more jobs, that definitely, makes it a little less of a pressing need to think about this 2 to 4 mile kind of mobility radius. But, and, we also may end up, one other thing is, moms and with multiple kids getting to the grocery store and back, that commute, even with a walkable city, can be not the easiest. And, they've given stories, but also you can see those moms kind of struggling on that little trip in Clarkston from time to time. So we may, it may not just be a youth focus. It may also think about some of those other groups that are, important to the community, but may face some challenges.
This is a Councilman Perkins here. I just want to clarify as well. This research hasn't been completed. It started, I believe, on the 6th. So this is also an opportunity if there's questions. And I think Councilman Carroll, that's a great even question to sort of explore and maybe confirm some assumptions or some of these questions have been asked before in research, but we all know our community is constantly changing, right? As we sort of have the outward push of Atlanta, as we have different kind of communities come into Clarkston and leave, and sort of there's this ebb and flow that we experience. And so if there's questions that may have been asked before, you want to make sure, hey, if it fits, if someone jumps on this as a research question, this would be a good opportunity to suggest maybe for an update, to get some updated data on something we've looked at before, or to ask a question you feel like is a gap. Maybe there's something that hasn't been explored before. Again, as Dr. Hyde said, I think they do want to give the students freedom to ask the questions they're interested in, as folks have kind of grown up in our community. But we can always, throw some suggestions out there, just so it's on his radar. So just wanted to make sure that was clear. We aren't at the end of the research; we're at sort of the beginning. So we have a unique opportunity to ask some questions on that end as well. So sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Councilman Perkins. And I believe I just want to go ahead and see what action do we need to do on this. Shall we expect the report to the council or to the committee in the future? Dr. Allen?
Yeah, so we're still trying to think. So we're definitely going to do a presentation. And then as far as a report goes, so the presentation will likely take place in August or September. And then maybe I could work with the students in September or August to write a report. I think I would, even though, because they're going to be in school, I will probably write the report with their consultation and other folks on the team. But possibly we could share out some information by September or October. But it may not be, the type of report may not be full of quantitative data, because mostly what they're doing is focusing on observations. And so there's a larger project called at Georgia Tech focusing on transportation and mobility that's run by professors instead of youth. This could be, I could talk to them about providing their research. I don't even know if they've reached out to the city council about what they're doing. So that could be another opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hyde again. Councilmember Perkins, do you want to add anything before we move to the third agenda item?
No, I think that's great. So I think Dr. Hyde, thank you again for jumping on, sharing a little bit about the work. I'm excited to see the results. And, again, I think, we talk about, as Councilwoman Hopkins mentioned, earlier, sort of the equity and inclusion committee that we have. I think the more, voices that we can have speaking into our decisions as a governing body, and then just as citizens, as members of the community, as neighbors. I think anytime we get more perspectives in the room, I think it's helpful. So I appreciate the work you're doing, and just that you guys are giving a formal voice to our community. So thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you again, Doctor. All right, we're going to go move to the next agenda item, which is discuss and review litter ordinance. I think most of our residents probably might know that we had on the agenda, litter ordinance was discussed twice in the last 2 months, starting from May and June, and there is a draft that was presented to the council that the council felt like it's important to send it to the Environment Committee for more scrutiny. And I went through the whole ordinance myself, and I just want to give you a little bird's eye view. It's the overall ordinance deals about littering, and the goal is to make sure that the city remains clean and that people don't litter. And it also includes what is prohibited, and also this deals with how do you enforce it. I think there is no real disagreement from what I felt from the council discussions, that the goal is really definitely something that everybody agrees on. We all agree that we want to have a clean city free from litter. The only disagreement was pretty much on the enforcement aspects of the ordinance, and the goal of the ordinance was also meant to consolidate all the different provisions that were put in different chapters, specifically chapter 5, 10, 12, and 19, and compile them into one chapter by creating a new section, which is section 23 of our book of ordinance. And it will have 4 sections or provisions: general provision, definitions, prohibition of littering, regulations and safeguard, and regulations governing animal waste, and enforcement of violations. I just will go ahead and see if there's anything that Councilmember Perkins you want to add.
Thank you, Councilman Eyasu. And I think just, I know there were some questions, raised in terms of some of the details. I think my only suggestion, and I'm interested to hear, what other members of the committee, have to say on this. Some only comment I would mainly add as we're thinking through some of these suggestions is that we structure any recommendations to the council, whether we're able to come to a conclusion during this meeting, or if we need to have a subsequent meeting on it. But we sort of structure it in 2 parts. One is to sort of the original ordinance or the original agenda item as is, which is to consolidate things. So the council can go ahead and consolidate if there's still questions raised during another work session, and then sort of itemize any changes that we would like to see made, to the litter ordinance as well. That way, maybe we aren't able to get, everything passed that, that we would like to see, but we can at least make a little forward progress, or organizing the basement, is one step. Even if you don't know what you want to keep and what you want to give away, it makes it a little easier to navigate. So that would be my only comment, is more from a structural standpoint in terms of how we're thinking through our recommendations in our time this evening. So thank you, Councilman Eyasu.
Thank you, sir. Any other comment from the committee members?
I have some.
Go ahead.
I would like to just throw out a general request to the universe that anyone who brings an ordinance like this, where you're taking out some parts and replace it with something else, to write it up in such a way so you have the old version on the left side of the page and the new version right beside it, so you can see them side by side and see what changes are actually happening, which saves us from having to do exactly the same thing, which I did on some of these. And I'm just going to say straight up that I recommend that this not be voted on tonight for the council, but that we work on it, because although we were told that it was just consolidating ordinances that were throughout our code, but in exactly the same language, just putting them all in one place. There are some dramatic changes. One of the ones I just looked up, it said to remove this section 10-11B, which reads, it shall be unlawful for any person to deposit any slops, garbage, or filth of any kind onto any street or in any public place or any private place without consent of the owner. And that's to be replaced with, it shall be unlawful to set fire to any leaves, rubbish, or trash of any kind anywhere in the city in accordance with the provisions of section 19-12 of this code. Part 2, it shall be unlawful for any person to deposit any offal or dead animals at any place within the city. Part 3, it shall be unlawful to sweep and push litter from the sidewalks into the streets. Such litter shall be deposited in a proper receptacle, which shall be covered to prevent scattering by wind and animal. Part 4, it shall be you can see that these are not in any way the same thing. I mean, and immediately when I look at number 1, it shall be unlawful to set fire to any leaves. Well, I just repainted my backyard fire pit. And so now I was collecting leaves from our grassy area to start as kindling for that. And I'm like, is that now used in the backyard fire pit with the sticks and twigs and leaves that I have to start the fire going to be against the rules and deposit any dead animals in the city? So I may or may not have buried my cat that passed away of old age somewhere in the city. Does that include pets that, you know, small animals that have died of natural cause? I'm just saying there's a lot more detail. This isn't just a consolidation, it's a rewrite. And similarly, another one that I just looked up was about the transport. Now, we discussed, those of us that were on the council or watched the council meeting about the transport, where it said anybody had to be licensed by the city to transport. What it was replacing is this section 10-10. It shall be unlawful for any person to haul or transport for any distance, any dirt, soil, sand, rubbish, or other material over or upon the streets of the city in any wagon, cart, wheelbarrow, truck, or other vehicle from which the dirt, soil, sand, rubbish, or any substance escapes or leaks. Now that to me actually reads much better than the updated revised version that originally had large fees attached and required a license from the city. This just says, don't be hauling dirty stuff and having it fall out the back of your truck. I like the old version better. So I think we can't just accept this as a consolidation of things from around the code because it's not. So I think if we're going to do a rewrite or a revision, we should do it properly and take our time. And I'm just not sure this is the most urgent thing right now because of, you know, a few of the things I have looked up. I think those 2 examples, I think the old version was better. So I think we might need to just kind of go back to the drawing board. And I do, you know, I think maybe I would like to suggest we address that in council, that anytime an ordinance comes up, that the old version and the new version be side by side on a page so we can do this and I don't have to flip back and forth and make copies and see, is it really an improvement or is it not? So that's my thoughts on this. I say we tackle this one.
Thank you, Councilmember Hopkins. And I also did have a little bit of concerns, including those you mentioned, such as setting fire to any leaves. I mean, the word says any leaves. I mean, you have a deposit of animals. I mean, like you said, I don't know if it is all animals or any animal, or is it, I mean, I don't think somebody would take an animal from out of the city limit and put it in the city limit unless his own pet died on him. I don't really know what are the limitations on that either. And the other one is also, I saw something, it says you can actually, it says it shall be unlawful for any person use the street, sidewalks, or gutters, meaning as means of drainage to carry off any used and dirty water. I just have a big. I don't understand what that means, dirty water. I mean, and this could be a little troubling. I mean, having dirt water. I mean, the water gets dirty when it gets hits the ground. I'm not sure what would qualify. I know we don't want people to be dumping oil or chemicals, but I don't know about dirty water. So I agree that there's a lot of things that really require some serious thoughts before we even decide to send it back to the council. And another one I saw is in the definitions, litter includes sand and gravel. So I'm not sure. I mean, sand can be considered litter and or gravel. I'm not sure how we can consider it as a litter. I mean, we have gravel parking lots, and so is it going to be litter? So you can't put sand anywhere? I'm not sure how that works, but that definitely could be a little bit of slippery slope. There are many things that I really am not sure how to. And another thing that it also says that you can't have. It says all animals species. You got to pick it up after them, or does it really include birds, or is it against the law for? I don't know. I mean, it says any animals, so it could be a little slippery slope. I think it would be better to focus on, which is the most of the time where people find it troubling would be pets, which includes primarily dogs. And I think we could just specify it for what animal we're talking about instead of making it broad. Those were quite some of the few things that I observed. But is there any other committee member who wants to speak on this agenda item?
Lisa's waving.
Go ahead.
I obviously someone's put a lot of work into this, so I would agree that it needs. It needs an easier way to review. And my suggestion is, and I've seen this from other committees, is put it in a Word doc, track your changes, or do a shared doc, track your changes, and allow the committee members to review and comment all in one shared document with a red line, so you can see exactly what's been changed where. But I don't know who's done all this work. Thank you. And I don't know how much work it would be to make that happen. But agree that it would be a lot easier to compare and comment in that format.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other committee member? I can't see you. Just please turn on your mic and speak. All right. If there is no committee member, go ahead, sir.
I can just say I have no intention of disinterring my rat terrier. She's buried on my property and she's going to stay there.
I was going to say, Lisa, don't tell me you never had a hamster funeral at your house.
Well, I don't know if we're allowed to flush fish down the toilet, but.
Yeah, I think this needs a lot of work. It is not exactly as represented as just a consolidation of ordinances that we already have. There's dramatic changes. And so, I just want to throw out for the committee, do you think this is the time that, do we want to really stop whatever else we're working on and do a litter ordinance to, I honestly, I'm not sure what our current ordinance says. I know one thing that they are screaming about in the apartments is dog feces. And if it is not addressed elsewhere, like we could maybe, do that part of it. But to do a comprehensive ordinance that is a rewrite of several sections where I think the language isn't actually tightening it up, but is really loosening it up. It was like, if it's not broken, leave it alone.
This
Or
is
Lou?
Robin. The only reason this was brought up is as we discussed, explained at both council work sessions when this item came up, was because we were audited by the Metropolitan North Georgia Water Planning District. And their recommendation is that we adopt a city litter ordinance, which we don't. We have, I guess, in their viewpoint and really how codes of ordinances work, you really should have all pertinent areas in one section. We did not have that as the item explained. So that's where this came up. It's not as if, either myself or staff or somebody said one day, hey, let's redo the litter ordinance.
Yeah.
No, it was a request as a result of an audit, again, as we explained at both of those meetings. And yes, there is, and I don't recall specifically, but we do currently in the current city codes do have where it is against city code, city law, to just have your dog poop and leave it on the curb or on the grass. You must pick it up when it is outside of your own property. And that includes common areas in all apartment complexes. So again, all apartment complexes, anybody who has a dog, and once you go outside of your apartment, wherever your dog poops, you are required by law to pick it up.
Okay, thank you. Do you have by any chance that their recommendation, was that like in an email or report, and did they give?
We will have the report they provided us, and I don't know, I think Shawana's on the line, but they gave us essentially a matrix. It's really kind of filling the check boxes to this audit that really only pertain to us, mainly for stormwater. Because that's the only utility that we provide. We do not provide water. We do not provide sewer. We do not provide reclaimed water or any type of other water utility. So we can send you that document. I actually don't know if I guess Shawana or Larry, if they gave us a final report.
So Robin,
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Larry.
All right, thank you, Robin. This actually began with EPD as a result of our stormwater permit. And this came up actually in 2020 as well, where EPD, through our stormwater program, recommended that all the various sections that exist in our ordinances be consolidated into one litter ordinance. Then it came up again, as Robin said, in the Metropolitan North Georgia Water Planning District audit of the program.
That's okay. That's
We will
interesting.
provide you a copy of that.
That would be super helpful. And then the other question is, did we get knocked for any of these items on the ordinance other than not having them in a single section of the code? But did we get not pass our inspection or audits? Were there things marked off specifically?
What are the ramifications, Larry, for not having this ordinance?
They'll remind us for 2 or 3 years, and then they'll send us a nasty letter.
Yeah, so there's no immediate issue. We were just simply based on that work. I mean, some items are much more important than others, but as Larry stated, specifically our stormwater annual permit, we do have a lot of compliance matters that we perform throughout the year. Then we are required to provide an annual report, which we do. If we were not complying, eventually they could fine us, and eventually they could revoke our permit, which would just cause more problems and likely more fines into the future. I mean, that's really the negative aspect of this.
But we would not be fined for if all of the law, if it were like a true consolidation, and if all the laws were throughout our code in various sections, they would not fine us for that. I think I'm laughing.
That's up to them. I don't know what they do.
Larry Kaiser might be right. We might be 2 or 3 years working up to a nasty letter, but if it's not actually a violation, then I think if we are going to make changes to it, then I'd really like to drill down.
We'll make the suggestions that you've been making. We'll bring it back in the method that you stated. Not a problem.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So there is no other comment from the committee. Any resident want to speak on this?
I did, if it's okay.
Go ahead.
I really like the idea of having all of the litter codes in one place, just for the aspect of a citizen and a resident. It'd be easier for us to find out exactly, you know, what to follow and where to find all of those things. So I think it sounds like a really great idea to take everything that's scattered about the code right now and just take it as is and put it into one document and then go through and pick through it, because that would be a better use of everybody's time, it seems, than to consolidate and change as we go. A lot of the wording changes do make sense in the version that's been published, but I understand the desire to go through everything very carefully to make sure that what was listed here when changed wasn't dropped, because sometimes you need to break things out and sometimes you need to consolidate sentences and issues. So I understand the need to go through and examine it very carefully, but it seems like there's two it's like there's two steps to this. Step one is consolidate everything as is into one document, send that to council, maybe have them vote to do that so that there is at least everything in one place. And then we meet the need of the checkbox from the audit, as all litter ordinances are as currently written in one place, so we don't get reminders, nasty letters, whatever. And then the environmental committee has the time to go through that bit by bit and really examine, is this relevant now? Is this relevant to the city or not? Because if we're going to bring up a micro farming ordinance, some of the litter things are going to be related to that micro farming. And so those are going to need to be looked at in tandem. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Medford. And there is no other comments from what I see. We would like to ask our city manager to hopefully get us another draft that actually contains the old change and the new ones side by side, or I'm not sure, or the other format, which is red lines, and from there we could compare and contrast easily, and then hopefully come up with an agreement. Does that seem fair, co-chair Perkins?
I think so. Mr. Gomez, do you feel comfortable with that? It sounded like
I already stated that that's what we would do. We'll do a strike through, underline, red line, and bring it all in one document.
Sure. Yeah, I think that sounds good to me. I think, and then if we need to address sort of the bigger picture items in terms of the litter ordinance itself, I think it will make any kind of revisions a lot easier when we're able to look at everything in one place. So if it's good with the rest of the committee, it is good with me.
For the sake of the committee, how long would this take, Mr. Gomez?
You want that to come back to the committee? I guess that depends on your next meeting.
We could have another meeting definitely within a month, but probably as soon as 2 weeks. But
well, it's likely
also consider.
Okay. Well, I mean, whenever you want to have the meeting, we'll have it at that meeting.
Okay. All right.
Councilman Perkins,
thank you.
Do we want to have this pushed through committee, or my understanding was as long as there aren't any changes to it, we're fine going ahead and pushing that consolidation through council, and then we could have another committee meeting where we're talking through some of the changes. That's where I understood us landing, and so then that, Mr. Gomez, that would be pretty much at your
that's fine.
Yeah.
We'll just consolidate all the sections into section 23. And again, it'll be each section, and then likely there'll be a lot of strike throughs, and then the new ones will be underlined or in red, and it'll just be one continuous document. And we also can put it side by side. That way you can review it. but it'll go back to your committee.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I think what Councilman Perkins was saying was, let's just send it to council as with everything exactly as is, except consolidated, and let council vote on just consolidation first, straight
Okay,
up
you don't want that to go
consolidation.
to the committee?
And then, red line down the middle and side by side. Yeah, and changes to the language would come back.
But there are, okay, but there are
just
changes to the chapters, the sections will have changes, some, again, because they will all be placed into one new chapter. So I'll just email it to all of you and to the council, and you decide how you want to proceed with it. But it will just be, again, the consolidation. There won't be any changes to the content of the wording. It'll be exactly what's in our current code, all those sections, and in sections 5, 10, 12, 19, and possibly a few others. Those will just be brought together into one section with no wording or content changes. And that will go to the council, is that correct?
That's what I'm thinking is probably, yeah, if there's no content changes, just, section number, article number, but the content's the same, then I think council would be likely to pass that immediately. And then we can take our time and really look at changes.
All right, from what I'm hearing, so there is no need to discuss this in the committee. Is that what I'm hearing?
Only changes. Changes come back to the committee. If the language is identical, as I forget, was it Lisa that said, maybe, I don't know who said it, but a two-step process, or Mark, I don't know. First step is consolidate in one place exactly as is with the same language. Second step is look at and review the language, and then side by side, old version, new version, and that comes back to second step is for the committee.
That works.
Okay. All right, we're gonna figure it out, and we're gonna go ahead and move to the next agenda item. If you can scroll up for me. All right, our next agenda item is agenda number 4, discuss installation of solar panels at Milam Park and its cost benefit analysis. I can quickly introduce this agenda item. This is just a continuation of what the committee has done before in the last year, just before COVID here, we had a meeting where we decided to recommend to the council that we install solar panels at Milam Park, and then some questions were raised by the council saying that they would like to know what is the cost benefit of, so they would like to see cost benefit analysis. I think the goal is obviously quite simple and easy, which is to have an alternate sustainable energy source that would supplement our existing energy supply. The idea was to have solar panels at Milam Park that could be used for the pool pumps and the pool building, to use it for electricity, and also on top of that, be environmentally lead by example. And the environmental benefits of it is always a plus. And I'm not sure if we do qualify as a city to federal credits, but the cost always could be offset by federal tax credits. From the last council meeting, our city manager has gave us a little brief, and also Larry also was there and very helpful in explaining that that the cost depends on how many panels we'll have, but we had a very elementary cost that could be up from 15,000 for 5 kilowatts up to 45,000 for 15 kilowatt panels. And I think at this point we have two options. The first option is to install it and own it, and it will pay for itself as we go, while we are actually, if we pay off the entire thing upfront. Or we could also leave it and have somebody else install it, and we don't have to pay anything. And that way, the only thing is, instead of paying for Georgia Power, we would have a new provider, whichever solar company. That's only partly. So right now, the city is spending about $9,000 average on electricity for the entire year and for the whole city. And the goal is to start with Milam Park, and let's see if it works good. We could use that and replicate it in other buildings, and eventually, I do remember we passed by 2034. I'm not sure about the exact date, but or that we would be using only renewable energy. And I think we need to start. If we don't start, we're not going to be there. So the best way we could start is by just doing the solar panels at Milam Park. And I kind of realized I definitely, or anybody in the committee, might not be very well versed about solar technology. So the best thing is, I feel like we could ask our city manager, at committee level, and also we have 4 council members right here in this meeting. So if there is a consensus, the idea would be to actually just have a bid and let the companies give us the cost benefit analysis themselves, and let them tell us which one is better, if they can give us the cost to install it or to lease it. And just like we did it for the website, for our city website upgrading, we could do the same thing, and we could narrow it down to 3 or 4 companies, and from there we could ask them to give us the presentation at the council meeting. And I feel like we could push that a little forward by, if there is a consensus by the committee, by just let us just bid it and ask the companies to give us their proposals. And it could be for both to lease it and or to install it, and then we own it. So for both, they could give us their prices, and we could just use those prices, and the council can decide. Do you want to add anything, Councilmember Perkins?
Thank you, Councilman Eyasu. And I just want to make sure I'm clear on it. I'm not sure we can necessarily hold a vote on anything as a quorum of council in an SAC meeting for the resolution that created us standing advisory committees, just because of open records, open meetings law. So I might be wrong on that, but and maybe I misunderstood what you're suggesting.
We'd just be voting to recommend.
Voting to recommend. Yeah, well, that would be the committee. That wouldn't necessarily be council. Council members who weren't a part of the committee voting to recommend. So, yeah. So I think you're suggesting that we bring this up for bid. Just make sure I'm understanding. Direct the city to put this out for bid, put out a request for proposals.
Right.
Okay. I would be interested. I know Mr. Gomez, I was watching some of this discussed a little bit in the city reports. Do you have any update on anything related to solar panels? Has there any more discussion happened about that just on the staff level?
We're just going to obtain quotes, as the vice mayor stated, to see what's out there in terms of whether leasing or buying, what types of rates, et cetera. So as was directed at the council work session. So.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I know Councilman Hassan brought up the question of doing sort of a cost benefit analysis. Would it be possible to ask companies to include some sort of cost benefit analysis in their proposals?
Well, that's what they'll provide.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I don't have any, I think if that's what we're recommending, I'd be okay with that.
Thank you. Any other committee member who want to say anything on this? All right. If there is none, any resident who want to speak on this agenda item?
I had a couple questions to follow up from some points that were brought up in the council meeting. And I think this might be something more for Mr. Kaiser. There was some concern about the panels and would they be able to be put on the pavilions? And if the like the pavilions and the roofs, would they hold and sustain the weight? Because solar panels aren't light, and to get good use of them, my understanding is you need several. And also the different kinds of power that's being drawn and whether or not, say, a pool pump could be used from solar energy draw, or would it need to be something that would be, say, like lights, something that draws a lot less and different types of power? If there's any information on that, or does that just get folded into the general proposal as part of the cost benefit?
So the analysis that I provided to council at work session did indeed discuss the roof loads as well as what is practical in terms of solar energy being used to supplement or to replace the power usage for pumps, or whether solar panels would be more attuned to offsetting the power requirements for, let's say, lighting at Milam Park and the pool. The analysis that I gave you, we'll talk a little bit at the end here of my presentation, the work session, where we talked about solar panels being used to supplement all the power usage at Milam Park, the pumps, etc. And that, just from a cost benefit analysis, I don't think you need an expert to tell you that payback period is pretty significant because of the power needs for pumps. Many places, many governments go after the low-hanging fruit and pursue things such as lighting as a big point with solar panels, so you get your feet wet before you jump into it too heavy. Of course, that's not my decision, that's council's decision. So my recommendation would be to start slow and then work up from there, because the number of panels required to generate the energy to run a pump or pumps at Milam Park is pretty significant. So if you go back to the roof loads, the first question, if you go with panels that can be used for lighting only, then I don't believe, based upon the roof structure that we have, and I was involved with the construction of that aquatic center back in 2011, that roof load would be more than sufficient if you added panels just for lighting. Power needs for lighting at Milam Park is adequate, but if you start adding the number of panels required for the pumps, etc., then that roof load would be far exceeded with that additional dead load from the solar panels. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. It seems like it would be good to really weigh out the amount of energy, because if we have to get so many solar panels to create such a great benefit, but then we've got to also offset the cost of buttressing the roofs, or even just like maybe putting a solar farm thing, something outside in the park area. These are just those costs that sort of really need to get looked at. I'm not saying no to solar power. God, I really would love to have it and make it work. It's just, I want it to be able to work well and, you know, get a great boat in the water without, you know, shooting holes in it before we get started.
Yeah, my suggestion is city manager and I discussed you can put out a request for quotes based upon 2 scenarios and just have, and again, this is not a hard bid. You can't actually make a presentation to government with a hard bid environment. You have to just ask for quotes and ask for a presentation. Anything more than that would be against state law. And so putting out a presentation of type of sorts, and to have 1 or 2 companies come in to make a presentation to city council, I think would be a really good first step, and provide those suppliers with 2 scenarios for a presentation to city council. They'll be more than happy to do that. So this one scenario would be a more of a lighting kind of solar panel situation. And then another scenario would be power everything at Milam Park. And we have that data. I have that data. And you can ask vendors to provide a presentation, and that's not against state law to do that. And then once you hear from them, then you can put together a real bid package and pursue whether you want the light to be powered by panels, or you want the pumps to be powered by panels, or maybe you want a hybrid, maybe something in between those 2. But until you have a vendors come and make a presentation, you won't really know which way you want to go with this.
Have we lost, Awet is on the phone now. Hello?
Okay.
I'm sorry, my power is coming and going as well. So if I disappear, I did not hang up on you. Bit of storms and electricity is getting a little unpredictable right now. So
I'd like to say something.
yes.
Yeah, Ms. Kelly.
Yes. If we're related to the solar panels, I think I put actually a presentation in your last report about a solar review. And I think that discussion was also at city council meeting about a solar review. Cherry Street Energy, based on my last report, did submit that they will actually do a solar review based on the buildings within the city. If we provide them with the specific information, I actually put that in my report this week, that they would like for us to do an assessment. If you would like for them to do an assessment on a few buildings that you're seeking to have solar powers on. I just wanted to bring that up, you know, just in the forefront, not to take away from the RFP process for the actual panels, but just to get that conduct that solar review.
Thank you.
May I say something? I don't know who, are you chairing right now, Mark? Are you?
I can't tell. I think Councilman Eyasu, you're on the line. You're kind of breaking up a little bit. I think I heard something there. I can't share. Go ahead, Councilwoman Hopkins.
Okay, I just put in the chat address for the Tesla solar roofing tiles, which are actually 3 times stronger than regular tiles apparently. And from some people I've heard is not dramatically different in price over the long run for a roof. And I'm wondering if we have, and I say very much in the long run, again, it takes time to pay it off, but have we looked into solar roofing tiles rather than panels?
No, we have not.
Okay. I think that would be something to look into as well, because this is particularly if we're talking about Milam Park and the pool, this is like one of our, I guess, scenic points of interest. It's sort of a feature point of Clarkston. And so let's face it, solar panels, as much as we like solar energy, are really, really ugly. And I think if we could do solar tiles, and you can get them in a variety of styles that look like everything from shake shingle to red Spanish tile. it would not make it quite so ugly. I think we should just get an idea about the costs involved there.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hopkins. Mr. Kaiser or Mr. Gomez, what I think sort of with that select or suggestion kind of comes to questions like how much life do we have left in our existing roofs for the potential locations for a solar panel? Do you guys have that information just off the top of your heads?
The aquatic pool, Councilman Perkins, the actual roof, what the building was installed in late 2012, late 2011 or early 2012. That's a 30-year roof. We all know the 30-year roofs, even with our own homes, sometimes don't quite last 30 years. But I will tell you that we looked at the roof about 5 years ago, actually. Mr. Beck and I believe, did. And at least 5 years ago, it was in great condition, no leaks. Those are architectural shingles, I believe they are. So how much, I guess the question is, what lifespan exists, still remains? I would say most probably 10 years.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. Yeah, so I think maybe that's the question then, before the committee, I think, is sort of what do we want to do in the short term in terms of exploring this? Do we want to go ahead and recommend that, council engage in a request for presentations? That could be, sort of its own thing. We could also start with Ms. Kawhi's suggestion and have a study done. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name. I'm starting to fade here on exactly what you called that, Ms. Kawhi, on sort of the viability of solar roofs on our different buildings. I think there's a number of different directions we could go with this. And then my sense, since we do have 10 years of life, just because I imagine there will be some questions and, additional questions of cost benefit in terms of the timing. Are we replacing a roof that doesn't need to be replaced at this point? Perhaps that could be a longer term objective is next time the roof comes up for replacement on one of our main buildings, if it aligns with a good patch of sunlight, we could consider replacing it with one of these solar roofs. And I think that could also give the technology some time to continue to develop and improve as well. But I'll entertain other comments from the rest of the committee. That's, I'm obviously one opinion out of many. Do we have any sense on the direction we would like to go in? Or
I think I like Shawana's idea of doing a solar review to just get a general idea about the viability and the costs involved. And I think it does not hurt to do a presentation. Obviously, I don't want to tear off a roof that is going to be good for another 10 years, because that's not really sustainable either if you're just throwing things out that don't need throwing out. But at the same time, I don't want to get a system that's going to pay for itself in 25 years that we could have in 10 years. So I think, to me, I feel like we need numbers, cost, payoff time. And then also, if we wanted to where, are we going to have battery storage that electricity generated during the day can be used at night? Or is it just going to be, electricity for the pumps or the lights indoors during the daytime while it's open? So that's another consideration that I think we have to look at the numbers.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hopkins. So it sounds like then the recommendation to council would be to go ahead with a study And then do we want to also recommend presentations, or do we want to wait to hear back to get the study back before we recommend presentations?
I think doing just a study first would be a good start, because I do think, depending on what the study says, but I do think when we do presentations, we need to include solar tiles in there.
And Mr. Gomez, just because I was not planning on fully chairing this meeting, do you need our recommendation? Does this need to go to council for a vote to actually?
It already did.
Well, I'm saying for the study, the solar study.
No, you don't. No, it doesn't.
Okay. Gotcha.
We were directed to determine the possibility, the feasibility of installing solar panels on city-owned buildings. So that's what we're proceeding with.
Okay. All right. Do we have any further comments from committee members to the public on this? Otherwise, we can move on to the next agenda item. All right, hearing no further comments, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is to discuss on implementing citywide single-use plastic ban. I'm not sure who suggested this. Was this Mr. or Councilman Eyasu's item?
Yeah, that was his. Is he dialing in?
He is no longer on the call.
I'll text him. I know.
Maybe we can come back to that.
Mr. Hadlock's trying to dial in.
I got it. Can you hear me?
Here's.
Okay.
I'll text.
Yep.
Eyasu.
Right. Mr. Gomez, do we have anybody in the waiting room at all, or is everyone accounted for?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me talking?
We can
Can
hear
anybody
you.
hear me speaking?
Okay, yeah.
I just came in. I'm
Yes.
sorry, I lost my net connection.
Okay. All right, well, we'll come back to agenda item 5 at the end of the meeting if Councilman Eyasu rejoins us. Let's move on to agenda item 6, discussion on a mission statement for the renovation of 40 Oaks. And let's see, Ms. Williams, was this you or Mr. Hadlock?
Yeah, well, I think I had.
All right, Mr. Hadlock,
Yeah,
go ahead with this.
I think I had spoken to several of you about this. Maybe not you, Mark, but yes, I think that it kind of ties in with the other item. I don't know. I guess I must have lost my connection about the time we were supposed to talk about Friendship Forest, or the need for hiring or considering a contracted professional to manage our green space. Yeah, so it's just a general item to see if people want to brainstorm this, or we can talk and do this between now and the next meeting to come up with a mission statement, so to speak, for presenting to the council for 40 Oaks, that it doesn't seem to have a well-defined purpose other than having some gardens there. We have a house that's falling apart, and not sure what the future of that is, or what the future use of it would be if it's renovated. And so I'm just concerned that it's that 40 Oaks is sort of floundering around there, so to speak, and that it's really a good green space amenity for the city. One of two really great ones that we have, actually. So but that's it. I think what we need to do is, if we can come up with a vision statement and or a mission statement for it, that would be great to present that to the council and give the council something to move forward with as far as funding and defining projects that we want to take on there.
And this is Robin. This was discussed during our budget, the current year's budget discussions back, excuse me, back in November and December. And we did budget for the renovations, and we have started the renovations for the house. And we have started that, excuse me, we received an environmental report, which pretty much states that there's asbestos in many parts of the house, for example. But we've begun that, and Mr. Kaiser, recently, we are about to advertise for a firm that specializes in these types of historic renovations. So I don't know, Larry, if you want to add anything to that, but we're proceeding with this. It was discussed. We have funding allocated for the renovations this year.
The RFQ
Okay,
for
I had noticed, I had not noticed any renovation taking place at all. I just saw that there was some plywood.
It does take a process. It's not something that happens from one day to the next or 1 week to the next. So it's in process. I have updated the council on this a few times this year. And Larry, go ahead with the RFQ.
Yes. So on, see, what is today? It's Thursday. On Tuesday of this week, the RFQ for architectural services, design services for historic preservation, that RFQ went on the street to everybody, to all firms throughout the United States. And those proposals, RFQ proposals, are due back. I don't know. I don't have the exact date in front of me, Robin. I think in August 9th or 10th or 11th.
Yes.
And so you'll have at that point. So it's a very detailed, it's on. Yeah, it's Tracy, I think when she comes back from vacation, we'll put it on the city website, but it's on the Georgia Procurement Registry right now as of Tuesday. And so obviously Robin can provide anybody with a copy of that RFQ. It's pretty extensive RFQ with all the previous testing that was done here a few weeks ago in terms of environmental testing, lead and asbestos. So that report is also included in the RFQ for professional architectural services for historic preservation. And that should come back in about a month.
Okay, that's good to know. I am worried about of course, as anybody should be, about the condition of the roof of the porch and the fact that that could cave in at any time. So I'm not sure we're really protecting it enough or blocking it off enough from the public in the meantime. But it's good to know that this is, and I'd love to have a copy of the RFP, whatever it was.
It's an RFQ.
Yeah.
And Mr. Hadlock, I do believe there is like caution tape. There are some measures that have been taken to block off portions of that property. And I know or the house, sorry. Mr. Gomez, you can correct me if I'm mistaken in this, but I believe you guys have been working very closely with global growers and a couple of other stakeholders who are using that property as well, just involving them in the process.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
I think signage out front, would be, other than just the caution tape, having signage out that says danger, keep out.
We'll take I drove by there today. Definitely needs to be reaffirmed, and we will do that tomorrow just to make sure people stay away. We've had people break into it. We added locks a couple of months ago, so we're aware of all of that.
So once we get the RFQ out and get responses, what kind of proposals are we looking at asking for? I think that's where they
have to renovate the structure.
So so the process is that the city will receive qualifications from qualified firms. We will then shortlist those firms through an evaluation matrix and criteria, shortlist them down to 2 or 3 firms. Then we will sit down with those 2 or 3 firms. Robin will then prepare a scope of work and that will be given to those 2 or 3 firms for purposes of receiving a price proposal from those 3 firms. Then we rank those 3 firms and select the highest ranked firm for them preparing preservation construction plans for renovation. And then once that's done or in the process of being done, then we go out and advertise for actual construction improvements. And that's all described in the RFQ process, Warren.
So the scope of work indicates to me the need for determining what the use of the building is going to be, which would lead into what I say having a vision statement for the refuge as a whole. I'm not sure what we're renovating toward, what we're trying to get out of it.
That's the RFQ, Warren. When you look at it, you'll see that.
But yeah, Mr. Adlock and Mr. Kaiser, I'm wondering if it would be helpful for us to sort of, to table discussion of this until we've had time to kind of take a look at the RFQ. And Mr. Hadlock, I'm not entirely clear exactly on exactly what you're wanting in terms of a mission statement, but I'm wondering if sort of a next step might be to engage some of the stakeholders that are already using the property for things as well. Councilwoman Hopkins, did you have a question or comment?
I did, and I have an understanding of where Warren's going with this. We're talking about the renovation of the house, and I really did not think that was our goal. I thought our goal was historic preservation of the house, and there's a huge difference between renovation and restoration and preservation. So, and what you need to do does very much depend on what you want to do in it, which brings me back to the question of where we are in terms of park management, because we did budget like 8 months ago to have a park ranger for this year. And I don't know if we've had an RFQ or a job opening go on the GMA for that, because I think this is the sort of thing that they might help decide what is the best use for that building. I don't want renovation is what you do to.
We're not talking about the use. We're talking about renovating and restoring, as you stated. The use will be determined at a later point, but the building does have to be repaired and restored, renovated, whatever term you want to use. That is imperative that does need to happen.
Yeah. I'd love to look at the RFQ, but once again, going back to what Laura and I are both trying to get at, I don't think either one of us are clear as to what we're renovating. We're renovating it to its original. Are we just making it safe, or are we renovating it to its original condition? In which case, are we? What about the chimney behind the current enclosure of it? What may be a chimney replacement? I don't know.
Well, we don't know that either. We're simply, that's what the RFQ is for, to determine what needs to happen. And again, it does need to be repaired. I mean, there's no other way around it. That's what has to be done. Exactly what that will be up to the architectural firms and then the engineering firms to tell us what exactly that is. But the idea is to restore it to likely what it was before, if that's even possible.
And so that's something that the council has already voted on, to restore and not to demolish it and start over again.
Correct. The direction was to restore what was there, if that's possible, but definitely not to demolish.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of the budget discussions. We can go back and look at that, but that's why we budgeted money to do that, to restore the house at 40 Oaks Nature Preserve.
So you send an RFQ and you have somebody or some people come in and have a look at it. and they say, well, it's really not worth restoration historically or structurally. It's going to cost you more than it's worth to put into it.
Mr. Hadlock, sorry, Mr.
Start all
Hadlock,
over again.
if I could interject, I think
Who's talking? I'm sorry, I can't see you.
this
Who's
is
talking?
Councilman Perkins.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to interject. I think some of these discussions might be outside the scope of our role as a committee. I think it'd be great if there's further questions after reviewing the RFQ. I think it would be perfectly, reasonable to, to bring it back up before the council, or to, to bring it up before Housing and Infrastructure or the HPC. In terms of the specific building, my understanding of this agenda item, it would be more for as the property is being renovated, is there a particular mission for it? So again, I think, reviewing some of the RFQs might be a good idea, and then also bringing in some of the additional stakeholders that could use the property. I think that would probably be within the scope of our committee. But Ms. Williams, I see you have your hand raised. I recognize you.
Yeah, I just think we need to keep in mind that it's called 40 Oaks Nature Preserve. So it is somewhat relevant to the environmental committee, but I understand your point in that we need to, well, to everyone's point, the house needs to be restored. It's falling down. My initial question was, and this is just a question, it may be long gone, but pre-pandemic, global growers and, stakeholders, as we're calling them, had an interest in obtaining or using their own grant funds, and maybe somehow in cooperation with the city. We had community meetings about it and community input. And there was concern over preserving it as a nature preserve and designating certain areas to continue with the community gardens, of course. I just wondered, was there anything furthered in those efforts, or was that something that just kind of didn't come to fruition? We're going to get the house in order, which I think is urgent. We can't wait for it to fall down while we decide on what we're doing with the property. But is anybody aware of any further efforts on that front by global growers or any other stakeholders who had certain plans?
This is Robin. I mean, they're still obviously interested in using the property they have been using. Global Growers has had a license with the city for a few years now, and that continues, and they would like to continue. They have expressed interest in using the structure after it's been renovated, but in terms of participating or funding the renovations, that really hasn't been a discussion. That has not been brought up.
Oh, no, that I was just thinking there was discussions of the entire grounds, how they would be renovated, how they would be used, all those things. But clearly all that's on hold, and we just need to get the house standing up.
That's correct. Yes. But they did express, for example, to have a composting area and a redesign of a few, to make it a little easier, but, more workable, more efficient for their use and for any future usage of other groups and or residents.
All right, let's prop the house up.
I think that at the current moment, we need to just make sure the house doesn't fall down, preserve it. And I don't care if we just throw a tarp over it, but I just put a thing in the comments so you could what we're talking about. It's a page from the National Park Service about the 4 different historic buildings. Rehabilitation acknowledges the need to alter or repair or add to historic property to meet continuing and changing uses while retaining the historic character. So that means, we're not, if it was, a dirt floor, shack that we wanted to return, like Cades Cove in Tennessee. Uses are restoration depicts a property at a particular period in time while removing evidence of other periods. So
Yeah.
if it's a 16th century building, then we don't want a TV antenna on top. So that is why I think Warren is asking about this because, and that is why I was asking about having park management and what's going on with that, because what the job is, what we're requesting somebody do is dependent on what we want to do inside this building and what we're preserving it for, because the jobs are actually different. And so I don't really want to blow off the request for a mission statement there, because I think sometimes we do get lost on the mission and we're not realizing the specifics. Park management is a professional field. People go to school, you can get a PhD in it. And we're not necessarily being as mindful of that. I do think we need to decide what we want to preserve this property for. Nowhere
Well,
on this list.
I do disagree. We are being mindful of it.
Does it say, I mean, excuse me, it does say restoration. Nowhere does it say renovation. Renovation is not something that, you know, you even want to consider with a historic property.
We're looking
to
just store it and repair so it does not fall down.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be a pretty ugly building in the end.
So, but I do see the need for a mission statement as to what the whole park is for, what the property is for, because, you know, does having global growers there go against it being a nature preserve? Because that is its name, it's a nature preserve. And also using it, you know, people are, as I said in one of the council meetings, people are dumping leaves right off the edge of Market Street there, creating a deadfall. And I hope it's not true, but it was, somebody had mentioned that was a city truck that was doing that.
Dumping leaves where?
In the woods, like across Carroll Park, right there.
You're saying where the mulch piles are?
In the front on Market Street side of.
No, then that would not have been.
No, I mean on Market.
No, and we would not do that. And if that's not something we would do, but we have had folks dump a lot of yard waste at 40 Oaks.
Okay.
So that would just sounds like illegal dumping.
Well, if it's a compost pile, that's one thing, but we have created a very, very dangerous situation just off Market Street there because the slope drops off at a very sharp angle, but it looks like a gradual, gentle slope until you try to put weight on it and drop down to your chest. And if it were a child, it would be dangerous, and we have no kind of fencing there. So I think we should have some homework and try to come up with mission statements. Warren, did you have one in mind when you brought this up? Did you have a proposal of a mission statement?
No, I don't have one proposed. I'm sorry, but I can do that.
Okay.
Pretty quickly, and for just something for us to jump off of and, you know, jump into with, and everybody can give it their 2 cents worth before we forward it to the council.
I say we all do an email brainstorm on mission statement.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
On the mission statement, I'm a little uncomfortable with us creating a mission statement for that big of a property without having some form of community input. Looks like someone actually just mentioned that in the comments as well. But as I'm sort of listening to this, that would be my concern. And
I'm all for that.
Yeah, so maybe we could put together sort of an idea of a community engagement process to come up with that. And I just want to clarify, Mr. Gomez, I think some of these discussions may have happened before I was a part of council in terms of that particular property. Have any of these discussions already happened in terms of the purpose of the park? Would those be included in an RFQ or any other?
No, because the RFQ again is for the renovation to repair again, so it doesn't continue to deteriorate and then eventually fall down. Okay. That's the purpose of this. The actual usage, we have not really had any discussions other than, as I stated a few moments ago, with global growers and other residents near there who have said, oh, this would be good for community usage. And I said, well, that's a great idea, but we haven't made any determination of what the usage will be after. Again, the goal is to restore, to keep from further deteriorating the structure of the house.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So that would be, if the rest of the committee feels that way, I would definitely recommend, we could come up with a proposed mission statement, but I think for things this big, usually it's better to involve the community in the process as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do we have any public comments on this? I think we have 2 members of the public, maybe 3 members of the public still on the call.
If I can make a
Go ahead,
comment. I really do think it's important to involve the community, because as a member of the community, I think you're wasting money trying to restore that house, because the money that it's going to cost to do the asbestos abatement and to deal with the lead paint and all of those other things, just to keep that building standing, is money that really might be better used in other ways and other means for that part, such as a pavilion for educating, and you can have outdoor classrooms or events or things in that space. There's a lot that space could be used for, and that would be great to get the community as a whole's input around it. Old buildings are lovely, but unless you're going to make that like a historical site where you have everything pristine and put in place, and then people can go and see exactly what history was like in that one moment of time, getting that house put back the way it was is kind of a waste of the community's money, unless that house served as some major historical function. Was it a stop on the Underground Railroad? Was it some important farmer, politician, I don't know, early statesman, or some critical member of the Revolutionary War? I don't know, unless it has some major significant historical purpose, or you plan to use it as a significant historical purpose. Saving the house just because we want to save old houses doesn't make a lot of sense. It's an enormous expense. That money could be used for taking that out and putting in a building that could be used for outdoor education, or could be used as a farming, perhaps for classes that fold back into our agriculture ordinance. Maybe that could be our community farm stand and neighborhood farmers market, where farmers and from the local community or even on that property can sell their goods. It could be like the corner grocery store. If you've ever been to the one that's across from Briar Lake Elementary School, that is a great use. It's a little farm stand. That building could be the farm stand. But saving what's there just for the sake of saving it, I think, is not a great use. And I get that my voice is a little late in that discussion, so that's okay. But I really think that we need to look hard at how you want to use that property before you decide to save an old building. And to do that, you really need to get the community involved. What are the needs and uses of the community, and how are they going to be using and engaging and working in that space? And then let that be what makes the decision on how you go forward with the RFQ. Once you have the numbers of what it will take to rebuild the house, if the community doesn't want it there, then putting all that money into restoring it isn't a responsible use of the money or the space.
Very cogent points, Amy. Thank you.
May I just?
Ms. Medford.
I'm sorry.
Real quick, do we have any other members of the public that want to comment? I can send it back to the committee. All right. Ms. Hopkins, or Councilwoman Hopkins, sorry.
Just on something that Amy mentioned, removing asbestos, were we? Because generally speaking, that's not a good idea unless you just really have a desperate desire for heart pine that they had put asbestos glue and linoleum on top of. Generally, the most cost efficient way of dealing with it is, you know, maybe put tile over it. So as long as it's not being removed and stirred up into the air, it's not dangerous. And there wouldn't be any reason to do that. And that is kind of where we would get into what are we going to use it for? Because I guess putting ceramic tile is not necessarily historic, but was that, you know, I wish I had the RFP in front of me, and I apologize, but was that part of it, removing asbestos or lead paint?
No, Councilwoman.
Okay.
This is Larry Geiser. So the report talks about, that was done before the RFQ was advertised. We did the evaluation of what exists, and we also had in there some abatement costs just for future reference. It was a decision of the architect making a recommendation back to council once the architectural firm is hired, and they'll give you options in terms of abatement or protection or covering the areas. I will tell you that there is asbestos in the insulation, there's asbestos in the drywall, there's asbestos in the roof, there's asbestos in the tile, and there's a lead in the windowsills, a lead on the exterior of the house, the exterior wall, the exterior facade also has asbestos in it. And so we've got quite a bit of asbestos in that, and on the exterior of that house.
Yeah, I mean, that's there's asbestos in pretty much every house in Clarkston except Carroll Park, maybe, but anything built before, I think, 75 or 80 is going to have asbestos. But again, unless you're sanding floors with asbestos glue on it, it's not necessarily dangerous or worth our while to, most of the time it's better to seal it in. But again, it depends on what we're going to use it for. I think that maybe we should plan on give it a couple of weeks and then pick a Saturday morning and have a part. There's parts there that have picnic tables and covering, isn't there? It's not a pavilion, but I think Global Growers put some kind of structure up there. And so maybe we can organize that and do, yeah, you pick the day, Lisa, we'll all be in your backyard, actually.
Come on over. Yeah, there's a little covered area there.
Okay, all right.
So
yeah, go ahead, Ms. Williams. I think you had
I'll jump in here. One, just everybody please keep in mind it's a nature preserve. If we're going to change that, then we certainly could, you know, get community input on that. Secondly, the Jamie Rosenthal, I think, has left the call, but Roots Down, his organization held a 40 Oaks community visioning session on October 5th, 2019. So before we, you know, redo that, it'd be great to get with him and see if we can get the findings from that work session. I think, well, I participated in it. I'm not sure if anybody else on this call did, but I just looked it up and he may have that information.
Ms. Williams. Yeah, so my suggestion then would be that we, you know, maybe go back and review a couple of items. We can sort of pick this back up in email and follow up with Mr. Rosenthal's and see if we can get some of the notes from that as you suggested, Ms. Williams. I think that's great. And then maybe our next step could be, you know, if it's necessary at that point, if we feel like we need more information, sort of re-engaging in a community process and then kind of moving forward to actually forming a vision statement. Does that sound amenable to everyone?
Yep.
Okay. Sounds good.
Mr. Hadlock, do you feel comfortable with that? Mr. Hadlock?
Also, Chair Eyasu was trying to get back in the meeting, said he was in a waiting room. Do you see that? Who's moderating?
Mr. Gomez?
There's no one in the waiting room.
I don't know if he's dialing in by phone.
He did.
It's everybody that's in the waiting room. There isn't currently anyone in the waiting room.
Okay.
Not everyone. Yeah, he did say his power and self-service went out. So yeah, well.
Yeah, well,
all right.
Okay. Okay. Well, why don't we move on then to the next agenda item, which is number 7, discussion on the scope of work for a contracted position for green space management and activities facilitator. I believe Ms. Williams, you had some thoughts on that. So
green space that one was not mine. Number 8 and 9 are mine.
Let's see, Mr. Hemlock, were you the green space?
Green space, and also
sorry, Mr. Hadlock, I think we're having some audio issues. Are you there?
Are you there?
You're sort of coming in and out. We'll try it one more time. Go ahead.
All right. Let me see if I move closer to my Wi-Fi. Can you hear me any better now?
Yes.
Yes.
So, yes, this is something that I've been discussing with others for as far as the need for a professional. I don't know if you'd say a forest ranger type of person, but partly that, partly a facilitator, which is, of course, what forest rangers also do. And someone with education and professional background in wildlife, refuges, nature preserves, that kind of thing. To help to guide actually it's more than guide, to direct our green spaces like Friendship Forest and 40 Oaks in particular, but not necessarily totally. And so it would be a contracted position, because I don't believe we have anybody on staff who is really qualified to do this. We don't have any contracted people currently who are qualified to manage a space like Friendship Forest. And of course, the staff has so far not really been able to deal with the projects that have been put forth to accomplish in Friendship Forest, the 2 wildflower gardens and the plantings around the what has been the grassy area, the Bermuda grass area. So I don't blame Public Works at all, but they don't know. I mean, they're not wildlife sanctuary manager people. They cut grass and do weed eating. So I think it's important, very important, for a city with our kind of vision for the environment, protection of our environment and the little ecosystem we have here in Clarkston, which includes, the Eastern Continental Divide running right through town with watershed on either side of the railroad tracks. So I think that it would do us well if we consider proposing to the council that we put together an RFQ for a contracted manager, forest ranger type of person for our green space.
Well, that's the park ranger position that Councilwoman Hopkins had mentioned. Parks Ranger, Parks Coordinator, and they would.
Yeah, I'm not sure when you mentioned that.
Who to hire.
I was out.
Yeah, so that's the position that's been discussed. It's in the budget. We will look to fill that over the next month to 6 weeks.
Yeah, and I think so. Yeah, I think that's and that's my idea was.
And the council also
something.
discussed it at a work session and meeting.
That's a contracted position for at least a year. We could, conceivably have somebody who could work with a landscape designer who could actually do our wildflower garden in Friendship Forest that just doesn't seem to be getting anywhere. So
will be added
yeah,
after. Remember, wasn't originally part of the original project, but it is going to be added.
What is that?
I'm not sure what.
Mr. Gomez, what?
The wildflower garden that has been discussed in the past year was not part of the original Friendship Forest Wildlife Sanctuary renovations. It was added after, as well as the schematic for the grassy area, as well as the pollinator garden. Those were added after, as well as the discussion recently about eventually looking to remove all the granite that was placed down there. But yes, the intent from when this project surfaced years ago was that eventually the city would contract with someone to do the maintenance, but to guide the maintenance, a professional who would do that. And we are, as I share with council, have shared with the council, we are doing that for the landscaping that was added around Refuge Coffee, for example, the Brockett Triangle. So we are going to do that, and certainly look to fill the Park Ranger, Park Coordinator position as well, that will provide these services and probably more.
Right.
Yeah. And thank you, Mr. Gomez.
Was that something that a contracted person would be hired by the council, voted on by the council, or how would that go?
This is a full-time position that was included in the budget by the city council. I'm sorry, a part-time position that we will look to turn into a full-time position.
I just say that because I've heard everything from really qualified professional to $15 an hour part-time or $12 an hour part-time position. And so
well, we had budgeted $20 an hour part-time, but the discussions recently have led to a full-time professional, as you stated, a little bit of what the work would inquire, what the requirements, and that's been pretty clear by the council. That's how we would like to proceed.
Good.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gomez. Yeah, Mr. Hadlock, have you seen, or Mr. Gomez, I'm assuming there's a job description. Has there been a job description drafted yet for that position?
No, we'll get started on getting a job description and get it, as I stated a few moments ago, to get that filled over the next month to 6 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gomez. Ms. Hopkins, or Councilwoman Hopkins?
I would, yeah, obviously, because I think I've mentioned it at almost every council meeting, that and the city arborist, but obviously, well, we did initially budget for a part-time person, but that was like a compromise thing because you are not going to get much out of a part-time person other than somebody else setting up the RFPs for wetlands professionals and preservation professionals and all of the different specialties within park management, because it's a different kind of professional that does the interpretive signage than those that preserve the wetlands, than those that preserve built buildings. And at 20 hours a week, the most we can hope for is somebody that can point us in the right direction. But so we definitely are wanting the highest, to me, I would say the highest academic qualifications that we could afford, to make sure that we get somebody that knows, if they can't do it all themselves, knows the people to hire to do it, to do the various things we need. Because I do see a a lot of things that are concerning me in the parks. And I know, you know, those plants that were planted in Friendship Forest, I did go through that list that you sent, and I checked all of them. Almost 50% of them are non-native. So that sort of defeats the purpose of, and even those that are native on the list were from, like the redbud wasn't a native cultivar of redbud. So the animals that are evolved here with these particular types of plants to live on them, those non-native hybrids and cultivars don't necessarily have the same food and stuff that keeps those plants and animals alive. So, but, and you said you went to In-Town Nursery, which does not specialize in native plants. So, and I'm not faulting you for that. It's just that this, like, it's a specialized area. And so we need to have the specialists on board.
And that's what we're, right. But again, as I stated earlier, this was added after the fact. This was something that, again, here's a list of items. All we really need to do is plant them, but we're doing it. But since you brought up, our city arborist is on the line at this meeting. So Alex, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you.
Do you have a camera, Alex? Can we? I think I've waited so long to meet you.
Yeah, hello.
There's Alex.
You have no idea.
So my apologies, Alex,
Thank
to
you.
keep you this long.
Yeah.
That's okay. It's been interesting.
Way to bury the lead, Robin. That's it. So good to meet you, Alex. Thank you. Welcome aboard. I'm glad you made it to our environmental committee. So yeah, we're gonna, because there's some other things on the agenda, I think Tree City, and we're gonna be working on tree ordinance. So we're hoping to recruit your energies and efforts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to be here and help you guys out in any ways that I can. So yeah.
We need a lot of help. We need a lot of help to protect our trees, save those trees. There was a reason I was campaigning, going around carrying the Lorax sign, you know, giant orange Lorax when I was marching through the streets. So very good. Can you just like introduce yourself a little bit, your history, your back? I did myself, like my Google check you out, but I'm like for everybody.
Sure. And hopefully I'm not breaking up. I know my office sometimes has poor Wi-Fi, but if everyone can hear me, that's good.
Yes,
yeah,
very well.
My name's Alex Phillips. I am a ISA certified arborist and track qualification, which is tree risk assessment qualified. I have been in the tree care industry since 2006 and have been in the green industry since about 1998. So been doing a lot of work with plants and trees pretty much my whole working life. But I really started on the consulting side actually when I moved to Atlanta, and I stopped climbing trees and doing that work and started being more of an assessing of woodlands, of stands of trees, and helping with permitting and working with jurisdictions throughout the Metro Atlanta area on their trees. My formal education, I have undergraduate in environmental studies and geography, and then I have a master's in landscape architecture. I don't use the landscape architecture very much anymore, but because really I do focus mostly on trees and tree assessment and working really on the permitting side of things and kind of helping folks understand what they have in their canopy and in their forest. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions, or if there's anything else you guys would like to know, let me know.
I'm just wondering what you mean by working on the permitting side. What does that mean exactly?
Well, so in terms of on the municipal side, I worked with the city of Milton, and again, as in the consulting capacity. So I was a contract employee with them. I was not a full-time Milton employee, but I processed all of their residential removal permits. Their ordinance is written that if you want to remove any tree over 6 inches in diameter, you need to file a permit and pay a fee for it if it's healthy. And then you are also assessed a canopy value of that tree that has to be replaced on your property if your property doesn't fall within their criteria of 60% canopy coverage per lot. And so that was processing those permits and issuing the permits. And then on trees that were deemed to be hazardous, we would love to have a certified arborist go out and send us a report, but that doesn't usually happen. So I would go out and assess those trees that they said, oh, this pine is leaning, or this oak tree is damaged, there's a limb that's broken out of it or something. And then I would go out and assess those. So that's the side in regards to what what the city and what I talked to Mr. Gomez about and Shawana about in regard to the permitting side. On the other side of my consulting, I work with developers or anyone that wants to do a building project where they might have to do tree removal for their project, and what steps need to be followed in order to make that a possibility. And that varies everywhere. So every place has a different canopy or tree ordinance. And I work in every county and city in the Metro Atlanta area. And so I have a wide knowledge of tree ordinances. I know almost all of them backwards and forwards. And I will say I've never done anything in the city of Clarkston other than a couple of reviews. So I'm not too familiar, but I did look over it before the meeting tonight to kind of get an idea of where you guys are at with that. And in particular with the standards for the Tree City USA qualification. And yeah, I think there's some things that could definitely be added, but I think that's also, that is I'll say this, when I worked in Milton, we were, my role there was contingent on them rewriting their ordinance. What their full-time arborist was doing as pretty much 75% of her job. So that's where me helping with the permitting, that's why they brought me in. That is a very long and contentious process because stakeholders all have a different opinion on the value of trees. And that depends on what you want to do with land. If you want preservation, that means one thing. If you think developing land is important and bringing in revenue through tax and development, that's another side of it. And I mean, all sides have to be heard, and I think compromises have to be made. So, and in particular, I mean, people focus on site density, and I didn't read that in the ordinance for the city of Clarkston. Specimen trees, which is not defined. It says it's to be defined by I believe the consultant is how I read it. So there's a lot of room, I think, and I think that does need to be added in order for the Tree City USA qualification to be granted to the city.
Mr. Phillips, if I could jump in real quick.
Yeah.
Just to make sure we kind of, check off our things because I think it feels like we're getting into sort of the next agenda item, which is fine. I love the enthusiasm and glad to have you on board.
Anyway, so
I appreciate how knowledgeable you are about things, but I just want to make sure going back to the discussion of the scope of work for a contracted person. Real quick, I wanted to just open up, see if any members of the public wanted to comment, and then sort of drill down into what our next steps are on that, and then we can jump into this Tree City USA discussion here in full force. So are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this item? All right. Well, just for the committee, what are we thinking are next steps? It sounds like Mr. Gomez already has some ideas. We've already provided him some input as well, just sort of values in terms of crafting a job description. Is there anything that needs to happen? But before that, and Mr. Gomez, feel free to interject if you have any thoughts you would like to share on that item as well.
As I stated, it's been made pretty clear from the budget what's to happen next. So that's the next steps that we're taking to hire a parks coordinator to oversee everything that we discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. So my suggestion would be that since this has already been discussed on council and there's already been some guidelines, there's already been money allocated to it, that we let that process play out, and then if there's any concerns raised in the future in terms of what that job description is, that the hours, things like that, we could bring it back before the committee if we think we need to expand the scope of responsibilities or allocate more money to that position in the future. But I'm interested in hearing sort of the thoughts of the rest of the committee as well.
For that position, I just want to make sure that they are an actual parks professional, that they have a degree in parks management or natural environmental preservation, that they're coming from that background. That's
Certainly.
my only
Very, yep, quite logical. That's what it will include.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gomez, and thank
Hello,
you, Councilwoman Hopkins.
Oh
yeah, Councilman Eyasu.
Yeah, sorry, I have been having difficulty. Apologize, I didn't hear most of the discussion, but I think there was a discussion about about a year ago regarding hiring somebody on part-time basis, or I think this position most likely need to be a full-time person who can actually oversee the parks and also be the point guy when it comes to who works with our arborists and also who works with our public works. And I think we could add more duties to it if there's a field that we don't have a lot for.
And we lost you
Thank
again.
you.
Have a day. Oh.
Thanks, Councilman. Yeah, and that was discussed, I think, fairly extensively in terms of the the hours and role. I think when you were dealing with connection issues, so I think that was communicated. So thanks for bringing that up again. I think it's important. Anybody else on the committee have any thoughts? We feel good about moving forward to sort of trusting the staff, the process, and then if there's, once that gets a little further down the line, we can reevaluate if we need to and address, any adjustments we think need to be made there. Not seeing any strong objections. So unless go ahead.
I have a question. It might just please, Laura, but it's for Robin Gomez. So far as the chain of command with the parks person, and I know most of the people doing the work are going to be public works, but they are going to have to do it according to the expertise of the parks person. So I'm wondering how that works. Does public works, then come under the heading of parks, or does he have any authority over those folks when they are working in the parks? What is the typical structure of that?
Well, this is essentially a coordinator level position. It's not a manager. It's not a department head. It's just a coordinator level, a professional, akin to an accountant or an engineer. It's just a professional. They will likely report to me directly, but will have all the equipment and all the infrastructure and the assistance from Public Works, because they are going to utilize some of the Public Works personnel, as well as the equipment to do whatever work we can do under that park coordinator's guidance and direction. But that's how I envision this working.
Okay. That makes sense. He's a SME.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Why don't we move on then to agenda item 8, which is jumping back into that discussion on the standards to qualify as a Tree City USA community. So I believe Ms. Williams, you had sort of raised this question. So I don't know if you want to provide us
I did.
sort of some thoughts in terms of the direction you want to you want to take the discussion.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
would say that this is not something I know a lot about. I'm open to other ideas and suggestions, but I just thought it could be a good way to position ourselves and also maybe hold ourselves accountable for tree care. I know we have our tree consultant now, hooray, but maybe this is another step. So I do have a quick presentation that I could probably get through in less than 10 minutes. It's a canned PowerPoint that comes from the Arbor Day Foundation. So if you guys want to entertain that, I can run through it, or we could just simply open the discussion with some professional opinions from the folks on this call.
I would be willing to watch it.
Okay, I'll go quick.
possible.
Someone give me a screen share.
Yep. Lisa, you're now the host of the meeting.
All right. Let me start. Hold on. Well, it would help if I could find my split screen. Sorry, guys. I had it set up and now I don't. There it is. All right.
Whose agenda is up? Who was sharing previously?
That's Mr. Gomez.
Right. And I stopped and made Lisa the host.
Mhm.
Why am I not- Okay, hold on. We're getting there. Sorry. All right, you guys see that?
Yes.
All right, so this is from the Arbor Day Foundation, and I will read through it quickly. The first slide here is on value. It's really just going to go, this is really just a table of contents, so let's move on. Trees serve a purpose in our communities. Many people enjoy their shade, their beauty, and the wildlife that live within them. Although people may not take a second to consider what it takes to maintain trees, they are an integral and important part of your community's infrastructure for a number of reasons. They are the green infrastructure that pays us back in so many ways, as you will see during the next few minutes. Trees are vital to the health of our community. They provide clean air, clean water, and psychological well-being. Trees are our legacy. Our children and grandchildren will reap the benefits of the trees we plant and maintain today. Trees have a positive impact on business in our community. With more attractive businesses, we get more shoppers who bring more dollars to our community. In short, trees are wise use of our community budget dollars. So let's take a look.
We're still on the title page.
Oh, it's not
Lisa.
running?
Is it supposed to?
Oh my gosh.
It's not
Well,
moving along. No, we're on
It's
Tree
not-
City USA, growing
that's-
strong communities.
Well, then I'm not doing a very good job. Well, let me just see if I can get to the vital slides and share. I do not know why it's not going. It said it was sharing on the other screen. Here we go.
We're still on the same cover page.
You don't see value?
Nope. Tree City
Really?
USA, growing
Okay,
strong
well-
communities.
It's flipping now. It's
I
scrolling.
see
to
it.
your
Okay,
screen.
so there's a,
okay.
okay, so we have a lag. All right, sorry, guys.
Value.
Value.
Very nice.
Okay, I'm gonna try to get this quickly. Many people enjoy their shade, their beauty, and wildlife that live within them. Although people may not take a second to consider what it means to maintain trees, they are an integral part of your community. We did that already. Research suggests that human beings have an innate preference for natural settings, increased employee productivity and reduction of symptoms of ADH in children, faster hospital recoveries, less crime, and an overall reduction in stress and anxiety. Trees increase property values. One large tree can add 10% to the market value of residential real estate. More frequent and longer shopping trips occur in tree-lined shopping districts, and shoppers are willing to spend more on goods while there. Yeah, I don't know why it's not flipping. Trees provide energy savings and contribute toward community health by filtering water and air, as well as through a net cooling effect. They remove 26 tons of CO2 and 300 pounds of pollutants from the air and provide the net cooling effect of 1,000 air conditioners all at the same time. I can't get it to flip. So there we go.
We see air conditioners.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay.
slow flipping. So 100 trees over 40 years is the slide I'm trying to share. Equal a benefits of $161,000. The costs are $89,000 and the payoff is $72,000. Do you guys see that slide? It's just a dollar slide.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the things. Does that make sense? I'm trying not to suck up too much time on this. Tree City USA is a national program sponsored by the Arbor Day Foundation in cooperation with the USDA Forest Service and the National Association of State Foresters. It provides direction, assistance, attention, and recognition to urban and community forestry programs. Tree City USA is a long-standing program with a big impact and a huge network of advocates. The Tree City USA program began nationally in 1976, and over 135 million people live in or near a Tree City USA community. By participating in the program, we will discover a network of support in over 3,400 Tree City USA communities across the United States that earn recognition each year. The Tree City USA program is a structure in which your community can build its forestry program. The process of planning and working toward becoming a Tree City USA community provides initial direction. Meeting the 4 standards, which we'll discuss in a moment, helps your community get started on systematic management of its tree resources. The second benefit is education of the city staff, community workers, and volunteers. This begins with the initial discussion of the requirements to meet Tree City USA status and continues with contact. And then there's some other information about optional missions, which I'm going to skip for now. I'm just going to let you read this. It improves your public image, quality of life, influence, and desirability. Create citizen pride, willingness to volunteer, public tree care, pride in community. Publicity. You become a Tree City. The community offers publicity opportunities through awards presentations, annual Arbor Day celebrations, enables large number of people to be reached with information about tree care, which in turn encourages better stewardship and pride of citizenship. And here, the important stuff, the standards. Well, one of the important things. The 4 qualifiers here are, and you have to meet these before you apply. You need a tree board or department, a tree care ordinance, community forestry program with per capita annual budget of at least $2, and an Arbor Day observance and proclamation. And here are a few more details on this. Tree board department must be professional forester or arborist. Have to have a group of volunteer citizens charged by ordinance with developing and administering a tree management program, and be legally responsible for the management of the community's trees. Standard 2. Your community must have a public tree care ordinance that establishes a tree board or forestry department or both and gives one of them responsibility for public tree care. It should also assign the task of crafting and implementing a plan of work. So really standards 1 and 2 are linked and typically happen alongside each other. Ideally, the ordinance gives guidance for planting, maintaining, and removing trees on public property. Beyond that, it can be flexible to meet the needs of our community. The key here is it provides an opportunity to set good policy and back it with force of law when necessary. Sorry, I skipped one there, but I read it. So we're on 3. The third standard must be met is the community must document at least $2 per capita working toward the planting, care, and removal of city trees and the planting activities to make those happen. It can be accumulated through a variety of expenditures, including city worker salaries spent on tree care, tree planting, watering, and fertilizing, equipment rental, purchase, and maintenance, Arbor Day expenses, tree care conferences, workshops, memberships, value of volunteer labor, donated trees, and supplies. So there's many ways to achieve that $2 per capita. And then finally, the fourth standard that must be met is an annual Arbor Day observance and proclamation. Arbor Day celebrations provide an opportunity to educate homeowners about tree planting and care, to introduce elements of conservation education and increase awareness of appropriate utility line planting. It can be designed to fit the budget and resources of our community and can be anywhere from a single hour-long award ceremony to a week-long celebration. Okay, next. Once we've met the 4 standards, we simply need to go to arborday.org, fill out the application by December 31st to qualify. There's no fee to apply for recognition, and multiple benefits to reap. Trees add an enormous amount of value to our communities. You can illustrate that value to the broader community by going through the process of meeting the standards and applying for Tree City USA recognition each year, and in return, reaping all the benefits the program offers. All right, sorry, that was flubbed a little bit, but I think you get the gist of it. And no doubt some of our city officials probably already are very aware of this program and its standards. So I will let go of the share now and would ask the opinion of our city manager and our consultant, Larry Kaiser, and our new tree consultant.
Thank you, Lisa, for the presentation. This is Robin, and I'm very familiar with the program. Implemented it as I was leaving in my prior city, although I don't know if they completed it. But when I was in Florida, we were a tree city going on multiple years. So we're doing some of that. Obviously, we need to revise our ordinance. Mr. Phillips provided a little bit of input on that. We would utilize his services, obviously, as part of being a tree city, and certainly just look to have an Arbor Day. We'd have a proclamation. Obviously, we'd have an event that would possibly include a tree giveaway or some other component, but yeah, very supportive of it. Always had fun at our Arbor Day tree giveaway when I was in Florida, and the 12 years that my family and I had a house in Clearwater, all of our trees were from the free trees that the city would give away, 2 per household each year. So the 12 years, we had about a little over 20 trees that were all part of the city's free tree giveaway program as part of their Arbor Day event. So very happy, and we can certainly begin that process. We would need to, we already have enough of a budget to qualify. We would just need to work on the narrative to improve it, to show that we are in fact caring and maintaining trees, and as well as adding new trees, which we, as part of our streetscape project alone, we added a few hundred trees in addition to the trees that were added at Friendship Forest. So very happy to continue with this and certainly utilize Mr. Phillips as well as any insight Mr. Kaiser would have.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Do any other members of the committee have any questions or comments? And thank you, Ms. Williams, for your presentation.
I'm just interested to hear Mr. Phillips' ideas about where we are in relation to this. I'm assuming you've read through our simple tree ordinance that basically says everything's in the hands of our city arborists.
Yes.
Oh, no, there you are.
Oh, yeah, yeah, and reading it, I think what the Tree City is really looking for is a little bit more comprehensive description of how the city will handle its trees in public parks and right away. which reading it, it's in there. It's just a little, it's a little hard to parse out what exactly the city is asking for on their properties. And so I think that might need to be clarified a little more. And then I think adding a section that does talk about proper planting and proper kind of pruning. Now, in my experience, some jurisdictions don't want that in the ordinance because they don't think that should be codified. And so they would create a manual that is not codified in the ordinance, but is referenced in the ordinance as what should be followed, which, you know, I think depends on the city's, I guess, direction they'd like to go with that. So I think in terms of what's written, there's probably a little room to clarify a little bit more on the city side of what they're doing to help the trees. And then also, yeah, as I read it, it does say a lot about the city arborist. And so I'm not sure if with my role with the city, if that would qualify with it in the capacity that, you know, I've spoken with Robin and Shawana on, or if it needs to be a little more concrete. And that could be in a tree board, which could, you know, like they said, you know, can be either appointed or nominated or by volunteer if people want to be a part of it, which, you know, I think that is a discussion to have as what direction the city would want to go in terms of those two components of the Tree City qualifications. Yeah, like Robin said, you do meet the finance one, and then the proclamation is pretty straightforward. So yeah, and then in terms of the rest of the ordinance, I mean, again, stop me if it's too much, but I think it could have a bit more teeth in terms of what is allowed on private property and what the city expects residents to do in regard to, in particular, larger diameter trees, and then in land development. And when people apply for land development permit, I think there could be beefed up quite a bit in terms of tree protection, in terms of what is expected of the developer to comply with that. Yeah, so there's a lot. I mean, it could be very robust. It can also, you know, remain quite straightforward and simple. You know, and obviously it depends on how much you guys want to put into it as a council and deal with all that. So, but yeah, I'm happy to you know, talk with everyone about it and help you guys find the right path forward for the city of Clarkston in, I think, you know, making it a better ordinance than it is now. I'll say that. Hopefully.
A question for you on that. You said that your role within the city, you're not sure if it completely meets the requirements according to the city code so far as what all goes on to the role of city arborist. Could you explain that a little more so far as how you perceive your role with the city as an arborist versus what is in the code? Because there is basically anytime anybody wants to cut down a tree, they turn in a request to the city arborist, and that's, you know, that person works on. Is that how you perceived your role with the city of Clarkston?
Not initially, and maybe Robin could speak better to. In our conversation, I thought I was being more on the city side of things and not so much on individual. So what your needs are for trees in your public parks and in the right of way, and less about the private, because people do apply, but I believe that still will be handled through the city's departments, and I wouldn't be necessarily taking on individual property owners' permits.
Okay.
But more guidance in terms of, you know, like Friendship Forest and other locations, 40 acres, and then the Milam, you know, those places where you have trees that do need to be assessed, and work does need to be done on them. You know, in particular, trees near parking lots, trails, anywhere where there's, you know, active use. And so I thought that was my understanding of it.
And that's what we've that's what I explained to Mr. Phillips, that we have essentially two sides to it. One, look, essentially a city urban forester, meaning, as he stated, looking at all of our trees that we own in our parks and our right-of-ways, everything that we're responsible for. Then Mr. Phillips has been providing review of development projects, the larger type of developments that we've had. But we will discuss, the discussion is to incorporate him in exactly what he said, plus eventually to have those individual, when a property owner comes in and says, hey, I'd like to take down this tree. I mean, most of those, at least in the time I've been here, are residents who wanted to remove a tree because it was dead or dying. And so we will begin to incorporate his review into that. So far, we pretty much have been relying on existing staff to do that. And again, because most of those were where clearly the tree was dead or dying and needed to be removed, and branches were falling and the residents were, needing the tree to be removed. But I think the biggest issue that we've dealt with have been in developments such as East Avenue, and to name one, but others where there will be the clearing of trees, of blocks of trees, hundreds of trees to thousands of trees. And that's where we are using Mr. Phillips' expertise to review that.
Okay, so it seems like the focus is more on tree removal and what would be involved there, as you said, permitting.
That's what it has been, but that's not where
preservation.
We're headed.
Okay.
Because again, most of our requests have been for tree removal. We are now going into the tree maintenance, again, for all of the trees that we own. It is not a requirement for a private property owner to come to us and say, hey, can you provide me some guidance on these trees? What should I do to better maintain them? I mean, that's up to each property owner. But if and typically when somebody does approach the city, it's to remove, again, something that is dead or is pretty close to being dead and creating a hazard.
Okay. Well, I read through pretty thoroughly the tree ordinance that they had in Brookhaven, which was Decatur, which was also very similar to the one in Brookhaven. And so far as development goes, they have such a difference in what it would cost a developer to put a building on a piece of land and not take the trees down versus taking the trees down. And sometimes it's just a matter of moving the building 10 foot forward or turning it in an angle. But she showed us some examples, and like some of them showed the house in the middle of a piece of property, square and square, dead in the center, would have required taking down several oak trees. And they said to put the house here like this would cost the developer like $60,000 in fees to take the trees down. And if they moved the house forward and turned it a bit and put a metal bridge over the roots, which would preserve them to put a driveway to like a carriage house in back, bridge might cost them $6,000, but they saved $50,000 in fees on the trees. So having your ordinance written in such a way that it motivates people to preserve the trees on the property, I think is the key thing. And yeah, our tree ordinance right now is nothing like that, not nearly that beefy. So that's kind of what I was hoping to put in place in Clarkston. So, it's not just a matter of, well, let me come in and see what it's going to cost me to cut down all these trees, which we don't specifically have in the code right now. It just said the city arborist will decide basically what the cost is, which is not nearly specific enough. But they can also say, what can I do, or how can I rearrange this building on this property so I'm not taking down the trees and save me buckets full of money. So that's sort of the way I'm hoping to go so far as our city ordinance is concerned. And working with the arborists to really work on the tree preservation side rather than what's involved in being able to remove them.
So on the qualifications for Tree City, the Tree City USA thing, Mr. Phillips, I think you had a few recommendations related to an ordinance. Is there anything else? It sounds like Mr. Gomez, you're very much in favor of this. It sounds like you already have experience implementing this in another city and getting this designation. Is there any other discussion we need to have, pertaining to the Tree City qualification before opening it up to the community? We don't have to close the discussion after that, but I just want to see if there's anything else we want to get on the table before we open it up for the comment. Anybody else in the committee? Okay. All right, does anyone from the public have any public comments related to this or questions?
I just wanted to say that I would really like to see us do more toward preserving trees in general. And I love this idea of being a tree city and getting that working with the Arbor Day Foundation. We joined them this year and got free trees for our joining into the Arbor Day. So that was fun. I got to plant those around the yard. And so I would love to see things like that done around the city to increase that. So I hope we'll be seeing more about how to be a Tree City USA in the future. And thanks for bringing it up.
Thank you, Ms. Bedford. So I'd like to move us toward sort of what our next steps are in this. Is there anything, Mr. Gomez, is there anything required from council on this? It sounds like something that we pretty much already have in the bag.
Yep.
Yeah. And any other questions or comments from other members of the committee on this? Do we feel comfortable moving forward? Ms. Williams, I know this is sort of your item, so do you have any further questions or
just
comments?
a big fat thank you for all the support. I can't wait. Let me know if there's anything I can do to assist or facilitate the application.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Williams. And Mr. Gomez, I would extend that offer as well if there's anything I can do from a council perspective to support you guys in that.
Yeah, one thing that the council will have to do is when we do is to revise the city tree ordinance. So we will certainly anybody's welcome to make any suggestions, but we'll take a look at it. We'll utilize Mr. Phillips' expertise and bring back a much more sound and resilient ordinance that will meet the Tree City definition as well as the expectations and the requirements of the council.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gomez. So do you have what sort of a timeline in mind for that? Or I think December
certainly before the end of this year, so we can submit the application, but we'll try to get it probably by the October work session.
Okay, great.
Probably even earlier than that, but we'll start working on it.
Should we consider forming a volunteer tree committee, as Mr. Phillips had mentioned, that could also meet the requirements of having one of the standards for the Tree City? Said it could be having a city arborist, or it could be a volunteer committee, or a department, or something for preserving trees. Obviously, we're not going to have a tree department.
Right. You can create a tree board if that's your
board.
Desire of the committee and desire of the city council.
Thoughts on that, Mr. Phillips? What would you recommend our best way to?
I think that you'd have to really specifically identify what the board's role would be and where they would fit into the ordinance. And so I think in the short term, it's probably a discussion to have. I don't know that the ordinance as it's written now is clear enough in what exactly a volunteer board would do. But I think it is an option, and it's a direction to go. But yeah, I think there'd be a lot more. Again, like I said, I think the stakeholders of the city would need to be involved once you start getting into this idea of preservation, which you had mentioned. And then in that scope is where, you could have a board that helps guide what that means for the city and how that is revised. And so, you'd mentioned Brookhaven and Decatur. Well, they're both going through revisions to their ordinances. Brookhaven was well, it became a city only, 8 years ago, and now they're rewriting it again. And that's where you having those kind of volunteer working groups to give input of what the community wants out of their tree ordinance, I think is very helpful. But I don't know that that's necessary at this moment, right? I think if the Tree City is a goal that's achievable by the end of the year, and then working towards what the ordinance will look like, I think having that may be a very helpful component for the city moving forward. That's where I'd say with it.
One other question. Have you worked on actually developing, I know you said most cities' tree ordinances inside and out at this point, but have you worked on actually developing them?
No, it's very political and I kind of stay out of that. So I have tended not to be as involved in those. I follow it, right? I mean, it's very important to what I do. And so I have not been involved. I work on all sides. And so I try and stay very neutral. I'm here for the trees. And that's what I like to do, and try and stay away from the people. So I think I haven't done anything, but I do know. I mean, I do know so many ordinances that I think it would. I think having a conversation about it and about goals of the city and how it gets rewritten would be very important. And then I could definitely guide you in ordinances that I think work. I work with so many of them that I see some that are very challenging, or their intent is good, but they're just not laid out in a way that makes them work. So trying to make it something that would work moving forward, I think I could definitely help with to make it a value to the city and to people that want to develop in the city or take down trees or prune trees, to know that they follow the proper ways to do all that stuff, I think would be very helpful.
I want to interject really quickly that, and I just pasted in the comments, is that particular standard that talks about the tree board. It does say or forestry department. I mean, frankly, the forestry department, that could be a broad definition, and I don't know if we necessarily need a tree board per se. But obviously we can discuss that further at another time, but perhaps it's just our forestry department and they take care of the trees.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Williams. And have a lot of confidence in Mr. Gomez having already walked through this process as well. So I think this would be great. I think we have additional thoughts or concerns too. We've got some great folks on our side who can kind of help guide the process, and anyone interested in being involved or engaging or who has further questions, I think we could follow up with email on that. So great. Well, unless we have any further last minute or any objections to moving forward, let's move on to agenda item number 9, which is the discussion on hiring a consultant to assess stream health and erosion and oversee the restoration project. And I'm not sure I saw
that's also me, and it's really an open discussion, and I know it's getting late. It sounds like we are cleaning up some other issues that a water board have with us. So I don't know if that's related at all. But I guess my concern is just the state of the creeks. I know we've hosted some cleanups, and that's great. We have a lot of erosion on our creeks. In particular, we're already had a lot of erosion around some of the new developments. And I doubt that's getting any better with clear cutting of trees. So I do want to know if we have received, and if this is inappropriate for this form, just say so, but if we have received the funds from the developer of East Avenue, if we could potentially discuss, and this would be a council decision, I'm sure, putting those funds towards a real plan for creek restoration.
You're referring to the $40,000 that the developer agreed to provide?
Right. I just
we have not received them. I believe
his condition was that he had to pay it before he was.
once he obtained the building permits, no building permits have been obtained yet.
Oh, I thought it was with the land disturbance permit. Maybe I was wrong. Okay.
I'll confirm with Shawana, but that's my recollection that
Okay.
it was at the point of obtaining building permits, which was similar to when we received the affordable housing funds from the other developer over on Glendale Road for the townhomes. At the time that they obtained their first building permit, that is when they provided the payment to us.
Okay.
But I do have I'm going to infer you're referring to the stream alongside that development at the end of East Avenue. There's been, the construction has caused challenges or changes to that stream.
Well, not just that stream. There's erosion issues in a lot of our streams, but I know that that one was already, not in great shape. And honestly, I haven't really looked at it. I know part of that stream borders DeKalb County Stoneview Park, so maybe out of our purvey. But given that the funds were, I don't know if they were directly meant for stream restoration. I just know that
No, environmental usage.
Environmental use. I just think it's a need that we have, and I don't know, maybe I just wanted to kind of throw that out there, and I don't really know a whole lot about it, but you can definitely see the erosion of the banks on our streams and loss of, native plants and the overtaking of kudzus and things like that. So just some thoughts.
Well,
I know it's getting late.
And I can have Larry jump in, but unfortunately, most of the streams are not within a right of way. They are not within the purview of the responsibility of the city. And that has a lot to do with how the city and the county were developed, and the fact that the state of Georgia did not even really have any ordinances related specifically to stormwater, for example, until just a few years ago. So we've met with multiple residents just in the last year alone regarding issues with streams that are on, all of them, I will tell you, are on private property, with the exception of Friendship Forest. The fact that that stream does go through Friendship Forest, or a part of it.
Right,
so
in 40 Oaks.
There's the, well, that's a storm. I see you're talking about the stormwater outlet, the little creek that runs from the lake, the Clarkston Shores Lake, down through Milam Park. Right?
Oh, okay. I thought that was an actual creek. Okay.
Well, it's more for they're all for stormwater, but
right.
Yeah. So part of that one does go, but I wouldn't necessarily call that well, I guess you can, once you get to the edge of Milam Park, all the way down near where the East Avenue development is. And then you're right, eventually then you're in unincorporated DeKalb. But to my knowledge, I think all that we've done is tried to regulate, or tried to correct on the ones that are on our property versus on private property. I don't know, Larry, is there anything? I don't know if he's still on the call. Yeah.
Yes, I'm here. So, Ms. Williams, we have, over the last decade, we have accomplished quite a bit in terms of stormwater control. Stormwater control is really, it's the velocity, in some extent volume of release of stormwater into streams and ditches from development. So about 10 years ago, actually about 6 years ago, we began to implement a significant number of regulations and ordinances to regulate stormwater coming from development sites. And I can just give you a whole slew of examples. We have stormwater agreements where developers must come in on a periodic basis based upon intervals of maintenance to maintain their site for stormwater, clean out pipes, clean out ponds. We adopted the Green Infrastructure Ordinance 2 years ago, which actually requires a developer through the development process to prove to the city that green infrastructure is not a viable solution. And so a lot of respects, and a lot of times they have to put it in green infrastructure, which is bioswales as an example. The city ourselves have instituted a whole large number of bioretention facilities that actually capture the stormwater and filters it in through a compost topsoil sand mixtures to clean the stormwater runoff before it enters streams. We did that. We're doing that now on Roland. We've done that on the Streetscapes project with the bioretention facility. So we have even gone in on a number of occasions, teamed with DeKalb County, and stabilized South Fork Peachtree Creek for a distance of about 300 feet when they redid their sanitary sewer line. And so we have spent a lot of time and effort and money in terms of regulations and ordinances to protect our streams. A little interesting bit of information. Since 2018, we do water quality monitoring as part of our stormwater permit that we submit to EPD every year. We have been performing a trend analysis in terms of water quality monitoring and how well our streams are behaving over time. And that's called, basically it's called TSS, which is total suspended solids. So what we've been seeing since 2018 as a result of all of our enforcement actions, warnings, citations we've issued developers, as well as all of our development requirements for capturing stormwater, we have seen the number of the TSS numbers go down over time, which means basically that there's less sediment and less other bad things in the stream since 2018. We have that trend analysis that actually shows the water quality improving in the city of Clarkston, which is really quite amazing. We presented that to EPD in our submittal of our MS4 permit last month, and we're waiting for them to respond to the very positive news, because that does not happen very often in governments where the water quality actually improves over time. And so that's in our stormwater permit. So there are isolated situations where erosion is pretty significant behind homes. And there are occasions where if that erosion causes a problem downstream to the city infrastructure, we do go in on private property occasionally, as Robin knows, and we do make some corrections on private property only if it's going to affect the city stormwater system. So it's costly. It takes a lot of time to go in and fix major erosion issues. But again, there are occasions when we do this, but we've been tackling this problem for years, and it's actually showing some benefits now, Ms. Williams.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that update. So I guess that answers my questions for now. Would you say, well, one more question. Would you say that I know there's a difference. I'm learning there's a difference between state waters and storm runoff and et cetera. But and a lot of these creeks are natural creeks, however, whether or not they house stormwater, right?
Yeah,
would you say that they are in need of restoration? Would you say they were in good shape?
So I have most probably walked every stream in this city over the past 10 years. And I would say that our streams are in moderate condition, meaning there are some really good areas with a lot of vegetation, and the stream banks are well maintained, and there's vegetation growing on them. But there's others that are very poor condition. So I think going in those isolated cases and looking at those poor conditions might be something beneficial. But remember, those streams that are, as Robin mentioned, many of them that are in poor condition, they're on private property. And so unless that erosional feature causes a problem downstream to city infrastructure, we just normally don't go in on private property to do this. Our ordinances don't allow it.
Do you have any jurisdiction over the buffers? Maintaining the buffers?
Yes.
Well, the buffer's 25 feet, so.
Well, no, it's more than that. It's
the state buffer's 25 feet.
No, it's more than that. No, it's more than that. There's three buffers. There's 25, 50, and 75.
Right. I mean the 25-foot buffer that the EPA requires, no matter what. Do we have jurisdiction to restore on private property on any of those buffers? Really?
No.
Well, I guess that answers all my questions for now.
May I?
Yeah, Ms. Hobson. If it pertains to the hiring thing, I want us to stay focused, just because we are getting a little late. We still.
So far as this goes, I think it generally maintaining stream health and hiring a consultant to evaluate that might be something that our parks manager would decide if we need, just like any other, environmental professional, like a wetlands specialist, a stream erosion specialist. Those, I think, in my mind, are the decisions that that person would be making. And also for the stream on East Avenue, I'm a little concerned because that same developer did a very similar development up in Johns Creek, where he clear cut a forest above a stream and put in a couple retention basins, which did not hold up and dropped a foot of mud in people's basements at the bottom of the hill, which cost millions to fix. So I'm thinking we should probably hold on to that 40,000 for the moment, just in case, because I'm just not sure. I'm very fearful of clear cutting a forest above a stream, as you know. I think we might have 40,000.
Councilman Hawkins, this is Larry Kaiser again. So, in my career, we have done a number of stream bank restoration projects over the years, and we actually helped DeKalb County with the one in Frenchie Forest, and it's actually turned out quite nice. And we've done one other in the city a number of years ago, and so we have seen many streams, good and bad and ugly, and so it's just a matter of where you want to spend your money and on what section of stream and where you get your biggest bang for your buck, like that, the benefit cost ratio we talked about on solar panels. It's the same thing with stream bank restoration. You have to really pinpoint your focus on where you think the best funds, the funds can be placed for the best benefit, because if not, you'll be throwing a lot of money away that really doesn't prove to be beneficial at all.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. Do we have any other comments from committee members or from our members of the public? All right. So it sounds like right now we're just going to sit on this. I don't hear any. It sounds like we got some clarity on exactly what's involved, what we can do, what we can't do with streams. So if there are no objections to it, I'd like us to move back to the agenda item we tabled for a moment, agenda item 5. Councilman Eyasu, are you still on the call?
No, he's not.
No, I think so.
Can you hear me?
Phone. Yes.
Yeah, I believe you had, I think this is sort of your, the thing you brought. So you have the floor.
Hey, Councilmember Perkins, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, well, I want to thank everybody. Sorry about the technical problems, but I think a lot of great points were made. So thanks everybody. I think that's all. If we close all the agendas, maybe we will schedule another meeting and we will communicate. That's all I have. Thanks everybody.
Awet, did you, I think, Awet, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here. Yes, sorry.
Did you want to address item number 5 that we skipped over earlier about the plastic bags? We skipped over.
My apologies. Okay.
We
can bring it up on another meeting.
Okay.
I think the idea is to possibly bring it up later, unless Mr. Gomez, if you had anything you wanted to share or update on that.
No, just the council passed a resolution, if you recall, that required that in city facilities that there would be no longer the use of single-use plastics within a year. So that's action that the city council already took.
Yeah, I think the discussion was on sort of the details in terms the process of implementing that, and
in terms of
I think phasing them out, sort of what the I'm assuming it's not going to be a cold stop. And Councilman Eyasu, you can, I think you had more questions on this.
He just muted himself.
I mean, this is Robin. I mean, essentially we would, I mean, I don't know how you, I mean, we would simply advise every employee that you would no longer be able to use or bring into work single-use plastics, and, you know, announce that 6 months before, or we'll announce it now and give a, you know, a due date. And of course, then we would no longer purchase any single-use plastic. So bottled waters, you know, forks, spoons, we would cease from using all of those. You know, I don't know what else we do, but it's only for, again, city-owned facilities. And we have employees at 3 facilities currently. Now, whether we extend that to, you know, how do you extend that to the park, to Milam Park? Or, you know, we're currently not renting out the women's club, but how do we extend that to the women's club? We can.
Yeah, Councilman Eyasu, did you have any more you wanted to ask on that? Or I think we could, if there's further discussion, we can always add this to a later committee meeting to pick it back up, because I think that may have been where the discussion was on the details. I'm not as familiar with what the questions were on this, Mr. Gomez. So, all right. Well, unless there's any further questions on that from Councilman Eyasu, I move that we adjourn this meeting. I'm not sure if we're voting on this since we're not a voting body, but
no,
we don't need to vote.
We just say goodnight.
All right. All right.
Thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
all so much, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks. Good night.